And you were live.
Good morning. At this point in time, I'd like to call our September board meeting to order. Supervisor McGowan is not able to be with us this morning, so our meeting will be led with a pledge of allegiance by Supervisor Beatty, please. At this time, I'd ask you to stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd ask our clerk of the board to please do the roll call.
No.
Mr. Conover,
Here.
Mr. Leggett,
Here.
Mr. Diamond,
Here.
Mr. McDevitt,
Here.
Ms. Bramer, here, Mr. Bruno,
Here.
Mr. Driscoll,
Here.
Mrs. Frazier, here, Ms. Smith, here, Ms. Hogan, here, Mr. Dickinson,
Here.
Mr. Merlino, Mr. Stroud,
Here.
Mr. Wild,
Here.
Mr. McGowan, Mr. Beatty,
Here.
Mr. Thomas,
Here.
Ms. Shepler,
Here.
Mr. Garrity,
Here.
Chairwoman Seaver.
Here.
Quorum is established.
Thank you. At this point in time, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 17th? No, that's the wrong date, right?
August 20th.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 20th board meeting, subject to correction by the board? That motion is made by Supervisor Driscoll, seconded by Supervisor Hogan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That carries. Thank you. At this point in time, it's always a privilege to be able to present our Employee of the Month award. To make this presentation today, I would ask our county administrator, along with our personnel chair, Supervisor Bramer, to please come forward.
Good morning, everybody. Happy to announce this month, the Employee of the Month is from the Human Resources Department. And without any objection, I'd like to ask if Jackie would be interested in making that presentation.
Good morning, everyone. This morning, I am pleased to announce that Candace Hoffman, my part-time HR clerk, is the Employee of the Month for September. Candace started in the HR department in December of 2020. Since joining the department, she quickly learned all of the administrative processes for all employee transactions. This includes maintenance of our paper files, as well as extensive data entry into New World, NovaTime, and the Employee Navigator systems. When we recently had a 2-month vacancy in the full-time HR specialist position, Candace quickly stepped up to fill the void. She processed 57 new hires and 22 terminations during that time frame, as well as conducted in-person orientation for 34 new employees. All of this takes a lot of preparation, coordination, and accuracy. Candace does all of this with positivity and a sense of humor, all while only working 24 hours a week. She offers to change her schedule to meet the needs of the department, and even volunteered to take the notary exam in Albany because our notary left. And she passed. Part-time staff, I think, can sometimes be overlooked, but in a small department like Human Resources, they keep the wheels on the bus and are invaluable members of the team. So I just want to publicly thank Candace for all of her hard work and everything she's done.
Congratulations. Once again, congratulations. Next, every month we have had the opportunity and the privilege to recognize employees that have completed our leadership training. And it's wonderful not only to see so many department heads, but a lot of our senior staff completing this and earning their badges for their stackable credentials. Today, we're recognizing both Trish Neninger from our Civil Service Department and Jody Brines from our Health Services. And I will ask in the appropriate committee meetings for a presentation or for the chairs, Supervisor Frazier and Supervisor Bramer, to present these certificates with them. I don't see them here today, but I'm sure they're on Zoom, and congratulations to both of you for your hard work. Next up, I'm going to start off with our committee, our chair from the board's perspective, but I would ask for a little bit of flexibility today and latitude at the end of my committee report out to all of you over this last busy month, and ask that our county administrator have an opportunity to provide his report. And that's done for an opportunity to speak to many of the members that are here today. Given the fact that we have moved to a hybrid situation, we are seeing our numbers rise locally. I think it would be appropriate with so many in attendance that are concerned about the topic, that I think our county administrator's report will address and provide an update over the last 2 days to just share with you some changing circumstances, as long as there is not an objection here today from this board. Does that sound okay? Thank you. As for my report, I will keep it uncharacteristically brief this morning, but I did attend a NISAC training with Supervisors Hogan, Supervisor Bramer, and Supervisor Leggett, along with our clerk of the board, Amanda Allen, just this past week, where not only did we take part in many different standing committees, I am a member of the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee and did attend that, but we all took different classes to maximize our time there. And what we walked away with were incredible updates on EMS and how ARPA funding can be utilized. We've talked about cybercrime, working with the media, and many different ways that we can continue to partner with counties surrounding us, responding to the pandemic, and most importantly, recovering from a pandemic. We also had the opportunity to have a county leaders meeting. I was very honored to be able to present the Chair of the Year award at the NISAC meeting, just an opening ceremony on Monday. One of a moment that we should all be very proud of that occurred in NISAC were the compliments that came to our planning department. Sarah in our planning department has worked very, very hard under Wayne Lamont's leadership and under Supervisor Hogan's committee to work on a map. And that map is being used nationally and statewide as it relates to broadband. And I just wanted to take a moment and highlight to all of you that she received many accolades at that meeting, but it's a powerful tool that is being used across the board. So we're very grateful for Warren County's leadership and the commitment and support from all of our board members to make that possible. We had inter-county, which I'm fortunate enough to be the chairwoman of this year. We represented 30 counties in a joint inter-county meeting with Western New York and with our Adirondacks, where we had a presentation from national leaders on broadband. This month, I've attended the majority of our committee meetings, task force meetings, and had multiple meetings in between that talked about our ARPA funding. We've talked about the challenges that we've had with our meal sites. We've had many other meetings that related to whether it be cybersecurity, a whole host of meetings led by our budget officer, Frank Thomas, related to every single one of our department's budgets, but also led by Supervisor Bramer and personnel performance evaluations. And those discussions and meetings took place in a very busy schedule, but an incredibly powerful opportunity for the board to work collaboratively with every department head to hear that feedback. And I believe I sent out 3 member updates this month. One of those just asking to make sure that all of our committee chairs and our committee members take the opportunity to get out into those departments that you sit on those committees for and become just to take an opportunity to talk a little bit more with them about what's going on. That was a resounding theme. To the extent that we're all able to make some time for that before the end of the year, that would be great. Many of you attended. I think we had half the board that came to the dedication of the Lou Tessier Way over at the airport. That was a nice opportunity for all of us to celebrate the hard work of a previous chair and longstanding board member from Lake George, who gave so much of his life to this community. I appreciate the fact that Supervisor Bruno was able to attend and present an acknowledgement of appreciation on behalf of the board at the Veterans meeting with the Adirondack Chamber of Commerce just last week. Many of you also attended the 9/11 ceremony where we presented a proclamation on behalf of all of us in Glens Falls on September 11th. We had, as I said, multiple other meetings. We are scheduled next week to start interviewing for the Ethics Board. Supervisor Driscoll had volunteered to be part of that with Supervisor Bramer. So we will start that Ethics Board kind of canvas. We had about a dozen individuals interested in the community ethics position. And we will also, we're excited to host a informational session with DEC and Soil and Water. That's coming up on the 23rd at 1 p.m. on the gypsy moths. And so that's something all of us experienced this summer, and it looks like we'll be experiencing next summer. So that information session will be Zoomed. As you have all read, we have hopefully have your support in allowing and affording an opportunity for all of our members and the public to have a hybrid situation here at the county where you can attend in person to your comfort level, or you can Zoom in and participate. You are able to vote and participate in executive session during those meetings. And that option to opt into that is until mid-January. And I'm sure the state will reevaluate it at that time. And I hope by then we're all back together in person permanently. Other than that, there's lots of other things that have been taking place. But again, I want to take this opportunity to allow our county administrator to jump ahead a little bit in the schedule before our committee chair reports and share with you some developments that he's been working very hard on, along with our staff and our community members and many other supervisors. So I thank you for your efforts this month, for your leadership and your commitment to our community. And with that, County Administrator Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. The anniversary that I would like to mention today with the 20 years of service with the Board of Elections is Catherine Devlin. We very much appreciate her commitment to the county and to the Board of Elections. In terms of my calendar, since the last board meeting on Wednesday, August 25th, 26th, and 27th, the budget review team continued meetings with department heads regarding their 2022 budget requests. Those were essentially all-day meetings with the exception of Thursday morning. We also met with the Health Insurance Working Group. And then again on Tuesday, August 31st, we met with the Health Insurance Working Group for the purpose of advancing the health insurance renewal, which is on your agenda today for approval out of the Personnel Committee. On Monday, August 30th, and the following day, the 31st, again, the budget review team conducted budget meetings all day with the department heads. On Wednesday, September 1st, I attended a Zoom meeting with Hamilton County supervisors to brief them on the situation with the meals and where we were at the time and where we look to be going. On Thursday, September 2nd, I participated in a Capital Region Leaders Roundtable discussion of various issues, including all of including the COVID status in all of the Capital Region counties. It was a very helpful meeting to hear what other counties were doing on a variety of things. On Friday, September 3rd, I had phone conversations with Cisco, which is a food delivery company. I'll mention it later in my remarks. Cisco has a state contract for foods, and we were able to, starting on that day and working with the purchasing department and the Office for the Aging, really ramp up the effort to get all of our meal sites signed up with Cisco so that they can accept a food ingredient delivery from Cisco. On Wednesday, September 8th, and on the 9th, we had all-day meetings with department heads to begin the department head evaluation process. With the exception of early morning Thursday, we met regarding the ARPA process. We've been getting a lot of ideas and feedback from the community on how to use those ARPA dollars, and we're setting up a process to vet out all of those ideas and make recommendations to this board. On Friday, September 10th, we finished the department head evaluation meetings. I again participated in an internal meeting with staff regarding progress on the meal program. And then I attended the ceremony for Supervisor Tessier, which was very enjoyable. I'm glad we did it. It's nice to recognize his hard work for the community. And yesterday, Thursday, September 16th, we met with counterparts in Washington County over Zoom to discuss the peer-to-peer program. As you know, our coordinator is no longer with us, but we do have a plan working with Washington County on where to take that program. And you'll hear more about that next week at the Human Services Committee from Mr. Rob York from our Mental Health Department. That's a summary of my activities. I'd like to speak to Resolution 372, which is the Mom's Meals Resolution. And the resolution that's been posted online that you received a number of days ago, we've made some revisions to that resolution. I'd like to speak to those revisions now. I think if you have the same packet I do, the revised version of Resolution 372 is in your packet. So here it goes. First, this resolution needed to reference back to the RFP process that gave us the Mom's Meals proposal, and it had to give Julie Butler, our purchasing director, the authority to accept that proposal. So that's why we needed to add the first whereas paragraph and the first resolved paragraph. Those are technicalities from a purchasing standpoint. Second, the situation when the Public Health Committee first advanced this resolution on August 23rd is very different from the situation today. Initially, it looked as though we had no good option to source food ingredients because our commodity bids had failed and because we were not able to get return phone calls from state contractors who could also provide us with those food ingredients. We were therefore in a situation on August 23rd where Mom's Meals might have been the only food source for most, if not all, the meal sites that we were able to procure under our procurement policies. And we were looking at a not to exceed amount for that contract of $800,000. That was based on an estimate that our Office for the Aging did if we had to use that contract for a 12-month period for all the sites. But as I previously mentioned 2 weeks ago on September 3rd, our luck changed. We were able to break through with Cisco. Cisco is the major state contractor to provide food items that our meal sites need. And ever since then, our purchasing director, Julie Butler, and our Office for the Aging Director, Dee Park, and I have been working very hard with Cisco to get accounts set up for all of those meal sites so that those sites can order food and operate as normal. That's everybody's goal here. Now, our progress with Cisco allows us to revise the second resolved paragraph on this resolution to remove the $800,000 not to exceed amount. So we no longer have $800,000 in that resolution. And that's because Mom's Meals is very much an emergency backstop option rather than the main option. Mom's Meals is not intended to be the main option here. And we do not foresee anywhere near the level of usage that we initially thought we would have when we discussed this on August 23rd. We're currently using this option only for the clients associated with the Chester site and the Warrensburg site, because those sites are having staffing difficulties. But we're working through those staffing difficulties with the idea of getting those sites back up and running the way they normally do with the foods provided by Cisco. The remainder of this revised resolution was revised in light of Mom's Meals being an emergency backstop option that will only be called upon if and when absolutely necessary. So the third and fourth resolved paragraphs limit what the Office for the Aging is able to spend under the Mom's Meals contract to $85,000. And if more funds are needed, the Office for the Aging will have to come back to this Board of Supervisors for further authorization to spend above the $85,000. Now, $85,000 is the Office for the Aging's estimate of a worst-case scenario for September and October, and it was calculated by our Office for the Aging Director, assuming that the Mom's Meals is utilized for the full month of September by only Chester and Warrensburg, where it's currently being used. And it assumes a very worst case scenario that something goes horribly wrong in the month of October, and it requires every single meal site to utilize Mom's Meals for the month of October. And I want to stress that we do not think that that will happen. We believe that all the other sites will be online with Cisco shortly and will not require Mom's Meals. And we're also, as I mentioned, we're aggressively working to fill all the meal program vacancies in order to bring Chester and Warrensburg back online so that they no longer need Mom's Meals. So, but the logic in appropriating in this resolution for a worst case scenario, even if we don't think it'll happen, is to reduce the possibility of any disruption in services as close to 0% as we possibly can. That's the goal. The fifth and sixth resolve paragraphs take into account the very strong feedback we've received from our senior community, and thank you for being here this morning, stating that the shipped refrigerated meals should be a last resort only, and that we should still ensure in-person check-ins with our seniors. So here's what we're doing with those resolve paragraphs. The fifth resolve states that any site that's not already on Mom's Meals would only be allowed to transition to Mom's Meals upon approval of the county supervisors who represent those clients. These would be the supervisors from both Warren County and Hamilton County. What we're saying is if a site's not already on Mom's Meals, the only way it goes over to Mom's Meals is if the supervisors representing those populations agree to it. Hamilton County Chairman Bill Farber and Warren County Chairwoman Rachel Sieber will be kept in the loop on these discussions. But the decisions are going to be made by the local supervisors who represent those populations. And there's a reason for that. That's because those supervisors know their seniors the best and they know their communities the best. And they're in the best position to formulate an alternative to Mom's Meals if that service is not desired in those towns. The sixth resolve paragraph affirms that the Office for the Aging will ensure in-person visitations at least 3 times a week for any community that is utilizing Mom's Meals. That means we have volunteers, we have staff, we have people that are still willing to do these visitations. We're going to do these visitations at least 3 times a week. Dee Park, our director, has a plan in place to make this happen, and she'll be discussing this plan at the next health committee meeting. So that is a review of what these revisions are and why they're in this resolution. And I would just like to thank the county staff, the supervisors in both counties, and the residents who all played a part in helping me to make these revisions to this resolution. And I'm hopeful that everybody is confident, as I am, that the revised resolution strikes a balance between ensuring that the meal program continues to maintain the quality our clients have come to expect, while also providing a solid backup option to maintain meal service in worst case scenarios. So this is a very challenging time to run a meal program. I know it's been a very nerve-wracking time to hear these decisions happen in real time, but I believe we will weather the storm, and I believe we will provide quality service that our seniors have come to expect. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think appropriate, our county administrator had asked me if we would please just afford an opportunity for our members of the public that are here today that would like to talk about this proposed resolution, to have an opportunity to just address us and share their concerns and their feedback, and perhaps, your reaction to just the updates that we've been able to work on the last few weeks, last few days. So at this time, without objection from the board, I would like to address that first. Thank you. I would ask anyone that's interested in being heard to please just come one by one up to the podium. You'll need to state your name, just for the record, please, if you don't mind. And just so everyone knows, I'm privileged to the floor. There hasn't been one time I've cut a single soul off. So we're just asking, as long as, decorum is followed, we would love to be able to have the opportunity to hear from you.
I'll be brief.
That's fine, sir. Your
My
name.
name is Arthur Yanati, 4 Centennial Drive, Queensbury. Been a volunteer driver for the home delivered meal program for several years now, from the Cedars site here in Queensbury. Last week, I learned of this whole problem. I didn't know about it beforehand, about the impending changes that were going to happen to the program. Last Wednesday on the 8th, I sent an email to my 5 Queensbury representatives on the board. I received a reply from Mr. Beatty that very afternoon, a very positive response. Thank you, Mr. Beatty. I received no response from Mr. Wild, Mr. Strow, Mr. McGowan, or you, Ms. Sieber. None, for the record.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand. I'm sorry you didn't get a reply from us. I know Supervisor Beatty was.
Supervisor
wanting to get
Beatty,
back to you.
I got a very
Yeah.
positive response from him that afternoon.
Yes.
The rest of the other 4, nothing. Nothing. Anyway, I'll continue. This program is more than just delivering meals. And I hope you know that. I think you do know that. It's about social contact. A lot of the times, this is the only social contact that these recipients get all day. We check up on them. They're happy to see us. It's more than just about delivering meals. Please realize that. It's a very important program. You are going to deliver a package to them every 2 weeks. It's going to weigh over 30 to 35 pounds. How do you expect some of these people to handle that? How did you expect that? Really? The stated reason for all this occurring was the non-renewal of the contract by US Foods, and that you are going to go to mom's meals. Well, I tell you, it doesn't wash. You're trying to tell me that you couldn't get delivery from any other source of food. There's schools, there's cafeterias, there's colleges, there's restaurants that are all able to get delivery of food. And you're trying to tell me that the Warren County Office of the Aging couldn't figure this out. That's ridiculous, and I don't accept it. So I'm glad that there's something in place with Cisco. It never should have got to this point. And the board shouldn't have to get involved to this level of detail. It should be the program area that should have been able to figure this out to get meals delivered. Is there something else going on that I don't know, that people just don't want to support this program and get rid of it? I hope that's not the case. It's very important. And that's my piece.
Thank you. And I just want to say on behalf of all of our members here at the board, I don't believe that's the case at all, that anyone wants to get rid of this program. And I think just the efforts and the coordination between the staff and the board members, even just late breaking over the last few days, shows that commitment and our desire to continue those programs. But your points are well taken, and I apologize for the lack of response on behalf of the Queensberry supervisors to you, sir. Would anyone else like to be heard? Yes, sir.
I get very emotional about Meals on Wheels. My name is Gene Casella. I'm New York City born, 30 years in IBM. Taught some school after IBM, elementary school, taught kids how to use computers. And then my wife and I moved up here, which is where we used to vacation all the time. We came up, and the first year that we were here, we were brain dead. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. We needed some interaction with people, and we saw an ad for Meals on Wheels. We've been doing them for 25 years now. My wife is out doing a meal right now without me. I hope she doesn't get lost. I'm the driver, and she doesn't have a very good feel for direction. But I was very, very concerned about this. I'm so glad to hear what you just said about Cisco. This, and what this gentleman just said, you people don't know what's going on inside some of these homes with these homebound. It's incredible. It really is. A lot of them can't even open their doors. A lot of them can't even come to their doors. I was so concerned that we were going to leave meals outside the door. We're doing a lot of that right now. And we give them these frozen meals. Let me tell you, if you ever want to ask anybody about what goes on inside a home for the homebound, ask me. I go in there, my wife goes in there, and I see food laying around. I see the frozen meals quite a bit. I think what they're doing is one of the great things that we do, that Dee does, is she gives us a snack pack to give them beside the meals. And that snack pack, I think, is now what they're eating the next day instead of the frozen meal, because I come in there and I see the frozen meals a lot. A lot of these people can't use a microwave. Some don't even have a microwave. I see food wasting away in these places. We don't even, when we go into some of these houses, I'm sorry, I should never have brought this with me. That's my wife. It was my wife. She's lost. And by the way, if you'll excuse me for saying this, you mentioned today is September 17th. My wife and I are married 66 years today. Won't she ever put up with me? I don't know. But I'll get off the floor in a minute, but I just want to tell you what's going on inside some of these houses. When my wife goes in to one woman this Christmas and asks Elizabeth how her Christmas was, she said to my wife, "It was great. I got a call from my son." That's her life. We're talking about loneliness. We're not talking about just meals. We're talking about loneliness. The people that deliver to these people are so important. I was so concerned that we were going to have a FedEx driver dropping meals at the front of the houses. You got to go into a lot of these people. And there is incredible loneliness. My wife went to some man recently and she was on the front porch with him and I was wondering what was going on. And she came to the car and I said, "Honey, what was that all about?" And she said, "He wanted to kiss me." And I thought to myself, 93 years old. My God. But that goes to show you how lonely some of these people are, and especially the men. I mean, a lot of these homes that we're going to are just women. Women can handle it, it seems, but the men, forget about it. But anyway, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Whatever we can do to resolve this problem, God bless you people for it. Keep these people in mind. The loneliness is incredible. And the one thing that my wife and I get out of this that we love is if we wonder what we're doing is worth anything, every one of these people just about tell us, "God bless you for coming to me." Thank you.
Thank you. And it's really our thanks that we have to our entire community and to those of you that continue to deliver these meals. One of the concerns that this board had conveyed over the last couple of weeks in this situation has been for those in Warrensburg and Chestertown where they are getting mom's meals right now. That's our area that are getting those meals currently. It was about eyes. It was about how do we make sure that there is someone delivering that snack pack or continuing to knock on the door and check on them and have that dialogue. Moving forward, there is a plan in place that will have at least at a minimum 3 days a week of that personal contact. It's important that we work as hard as we can to get people hired to be able to cook and deliver. And so we are putting out a very aggressive job search and plea to our community to ask anyone who would have an interest in volunteering or in coming on board and providing those services to please join us here at Warren County and providing that. But what you shared with us was incredibly important, and we owe all of you our gratitude. And happy anniversary. If you'd share with us that secret for 66 years, that's wonderful. What is that lost?
Better call her.
But thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Edith Monroe. I'm a volunteer up in North Creek, New York. We've only been delivering, my husband and I, for the last 2.5 months. We've only known about the program for about the last year. And I feel like I do a fair amount of things within the town, but it's amazing what you don't know about your own town. So I'm wondering if Chestertown and Warrensburg, the actual citizens in need, the senior citizens, as well as their family members, how many of them actually understand this program? Is there anything that goes out to the community as a general whole to explain this program so that they know they can sign their mother or father up, or their aunt or the uncle or the man down the road that has no one? And I know that the meals that I deliver, we have a hot meal and a frozen meal. And it's Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And one of the people's houses that I've gone into, he's wheelchair bound, and he's often, when I get there, is sitting in his lazy boy back, and he's a very large man, and he never gets up, which is really good because most of the time he's not dressed. So he's got a blanket on him, so I'm totally good with that. But so I usually bring his meals in and put his hot one on the stove, his cold one in the cold stuff in the refrigerator, and the frozen stuff in the freezer. And upon the last 2 or 3 deliveries, all the frozen meals are still there. So these frozen meals, I don't know if he's eating any of them. Clearly, he's eating something. I see a lot of potato chip bags and whatnot around. And sometimes I say to him, oh, today we have macaroni and cheese. It's nice and hot. Do you want me to bring it to you right now? And he thinks that's marvelous. And at least I know he's getting a hot meal every other day. But the frozen meals are really a challenge for a lot of people that I've delivered to, that I've seen. Either they don't make it to the door and I'll bring it in. I know we have one that speaks only French and she just nods her head a lot. And so I cannot fathom that she's going to understand at any given point, if it comes to that, how to prepare these meals or even how to store them. And the people in the walkers lifting these boxes is just not going to be possible. Will there be somebody there in these Chestertown and Warrensburg houses to help them unload these boxes, put them in the refrigerators? If they have freezer space, maybe, maybe not. If they have functioning microwaves, can they deal with all that? That's a great deal for them to deal with. And just out of curiosity, these mom meals, are they coming from New York or are they outside of state?
Right. Unfortunately, they're from outside of state. We have identified some potential that what we hope Mom's Meal is a backup plan to a backup plan to a backup plan in dire emergencies. And we have identified some more local opportunities. But one of the reasons that we started revamping this was to say we need a way to provide fresh milk, fresh fruit, those snack packs. How can we supplement in those communities where we don't have right now the staffing to be able to have those hot meals? But I also want to say this is changing so quickly. We've had such a great outpour of people in our community, and our business owners, our members, like many of you here today, saying we can come to the table and help with this. We have better solutions, and that's what makes our community wonderful. And it's having all of you here too to make sure we work for you. We have to be held accountable by you. You deserve that. So it is our hope that we're going to continue to improve this program. I'm going to have in just a few seconds a stack of books that have all of our contact information, and we will make sure every single one of you have that so that you can reach out to both Supervisor Garrity and Supervisor Leggett in those communities right now, and also to our OFA staff. But I am positive we are continuing to work on closing in those gaps. So it's not ideal. It is not an ideal situation at all. And we hope that we can minimize the use of it to every extent possible. And your point about getting out there and making sure our community knows about this program and how to sign up, we've brought on a public information officer in the last year and a half. He's done an incredible job with COVID, and please make sure you're signed up for that email letter that comes out every day. We're on social media, but we could do a better job in print. And our partners here with the media are here today. I know Mike Goot will be writing another story about this, and those watching on Zoom. So we will try every which way to continue to work with every supervisor here to make sure those letters go out to the communities, both at the town level and the county level. And we'll continue to do a better job.
I know that Warrensburg, when they were working, they would make their meals at the local nursing home. And then they would deliver them out to the volunteers to deliver them. Is there a way that, for instance, is just throwing off the top of my head, but that North Creek could help cook Chestertown's meals, and you could take the workers that were from Chestertown, bring them over, and then the volunteers take it out to the volunteers the same way? I mean, I feel like there's ways that we can keep it in our towns. And if the people understood the importance, these moms, these dads, these grandmas, these grandpas, if you don't happen to live next to your mom or dad, if you live 2 or 3 states away and you call and say, hey, mom, how you doing? Guess what? She's going to lie to you. She's going to say, I'm fine, honey. Don't worry about me. I'm okay. You need eyes on. Without that eyes on, if you wait 2 weeks to check on them, you might be finding a dead body. And I know that's really over the top, but trust me, it can be that different. I went to deliver a meal last Wednesday and the person was being carried out to the ambulance, to which I helped him in the ambulance. That's fine. But they didn't take the meals that day, which I understand. But it's that quick that their lives can change without eyes on. Ideally, delivering meals 5 days a week minimum is what these people need. They need their hot meals. We should be treating them better than our prisoners. Our prisoners get a hot meal 7 days a week. We should be at the very minimum getting these guys hot meals 5 days a week. They deserve it. They've earned it. They've put time into our communities themselves. I just would like to see them treated better than our prisoners.
Agreed. Thank you. And we will continue to work on this collaboratively. You've said that so eloquently and impactfully. Thank you. And we will continue to work together as a board of 20 different supervisors and all of our municipalities to find answers and solutions. And I think that's what you're seeing here today. But we could do better, and we will. Are there other people that would like to be heard? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Beatrice Didio. I live at Cedars, but I've been a volunteer for over 6.5 years. For 5.5 years, I volunteered my time in the kitchen, and I saw a lot of things. 2 years ago, before COVID, the staff gradually was cut and cut and cut to the 5 or 6 that are there now. The meals were cut with COVID, which was a plan back in 2018, and it is in place now. We no longer have the hot meals in the lunch due to COVID, but that even after COVID restrictions were lifted, they couldn't accommodate that, and that's fine. Our biggest worry was our seniors and the meals and their welfare. And what was heartbreaking and disgusting was to read a letter in the paper, and as a volunteer, as a recipient of these meals, no one was told of these changes. No one. When we asked in the kitchen, the staff is not allowed to talk to us. It's not allowed to convey any messages to us. So we were kept in the dark. I want to know, can you tell us why none of this was presented to the community? If I had a parent there, I talked to a couple people I was delivering to, they had no clue. Nobody told them they weren't going to get a meal in the end of September or whenever. We couldn't get a date. I went to our supervisor that's in charge of us. I think it's Mary Ann. And that poor thing couldn't tell me either when the program was going to end. And as a volunteer, what am I supposed to tell my recipients who are getting this? A lot of them have dementia. It wouldn't matter anyways, because they don't even know. When I bring in a meal, because I live there, they will come later and want to know where their meal is. So if you think they're going to be able to remember to go pick up a 30-pound box, that's not happening. And I have questions about this. I researched this, and the total cost, shipping and handling, and 5 days a week, or whatever those meals are, is $170 per person for those meals for 1 month. But you mentioned a budget, and how are you going to be reimbursed? Are you asking the people to pay for any of these meals, or is anybody that's getting them is getting them free? There was, it's a gray area. We don't know the answers to any of this. I researched mom's meals. They barely got a 3. And I know somebody here that's tasted them and they're terrible. I know 6 people came to me and I'm not in charge of anything, but they know I'm a volunteer. And they just had horrible things to say about this. Plus, they're just getting out of the hospital. There was no way they could even lift these boxes. And I have a big question if they're not frozen, which I originally was told they are. How does, I wouldn't eat something that's been in my refrigerator for 2 weeks. So I don't know how they're, but I applaud every one of you here that has worked on this and found the solution. Because I'll tell you, we came in here with broken hearts and very angry that what are we going to do for these people that depend on us, that were there when we were growing up and were there for us. So I thank you for your time. Mr. Beatty, Mr. Driscoll, Mr. Beatty has been an angel for us. And I'm sorry I don't know all your other names that have helped us. But for the seniors of this community, God bless you all, and I thank you.
Well, we thank you for your service and for sharing with us those concerns. I know we're going to talk later today in the meeting about this proposed resolution. Our hope, just to address a couple quickly of those questions, because it will be a while before we get to our resolutions and talk about this proposed solution. It has not yet been passed. It is our hope today that we can unite and pass this resolution. It was for exactly those concerns that you mentioned that our initial approach was not acceptable. I agree. I've tried those meals. Several of us did. It isn't okay, which is why we want to be able to supplement in those situations where right now there hasn't been another option. Well, there hasn't been another option that we've been able to explore quickly enough to respond with a last minute change from our vendors. But we are working on that so it doesn't have to last very long, because I agree with you. Those meals are something to be desired. But that being said, it's our hope that the reason why I think there were so many unanswered questions is because our plan was never to end it. It was, how do we come up with solutions so we can continue to provide the service? I know Supervisor Frazier, she is the chairwoman of the department, the committee that oversees health services and the Office for the Aging. She's been working very hard on trying to find those solutions and respond to those needs. She did reach out to Cedars, had a discussion with them maybe 6 weeks ago, Supervisor Frazier, I think it was, and addressed with them some of the upcoming concerns. But again, we weren't at that point. And I read that same letter, and I know there's been a lot of responses, and we missed some of those responses. We've all been trying really hard to get back to everyone, and if we've missed people, we apologize. But I hope some of that provides some clarity in what the process has been and what we hope that it is moving forward.
Well, my question was, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
Why was it originally in the newspaper, but nobody was told anything? We had to read it there. I mean, I know it wasn't, you didn't have the answer to anything.
Yeah.
But
I know.
they couldn't even, if you can put it in the paper, you can send out
Yeah.
notices with the meal.
Yeah, I agree. The papers, unfortunately, they write the articles. We try to work very hard with our media partners to have both perspectives in there and provide that. We did do a brief press release, and our public information officer followed up with both papers to try to clarify even that letter. I think they did a little update the next week, but it's hard to see those. And we can do a better job communicating. No excuses here. Would anyone else like? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Joan Bobby. I live in Queensbury. I've been delivering Meals on Wheels for over 21 years. I know a lot of my people and I can't really talk, but I just hope that you will try to go back to 5 days a week on the meals. They don't need those frozen meals. They don't know what to do with them. I'm sorry. Thank you.
that would like to be heard before we start with the at this point in time, it is our process within our meeting to do our committee reports. Each supervisor gives a brief committee report, and then we will move on to discussion of resolutions, afford a privilege of the floor for anyone that would like to be heard regarding any resolution in front of us. There's another privilege of the floor at the end of the meeting. And then our supervisors engage into debate over those topics. And I will ask that this issue be one of the very first ones that we debate for those of you that would like to stay. But thank you for your time, your attendance, your patience, and for your feedback. At this point in time, let's start with our committee reports. I would ask Supervisor Beatty, Executive Committee, Finance and Government Operations and Advocacy.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just one comment. I want to thank all the seniors for coming. If you don't think your voice matters, it does. So I'm going to do my darndest to see if we can get the 5 days a week delivery. I was taking notes. And when you unite like you did, means a lot. My committee reports, I had a government operations meeting on the 23rd. There's one resolution in there, Resolution 366. It's fairly self-explanatory. It's authorizing the chair of the Board of Supervisors to send a letter to the governor and his state legislation encouraging them to provide funding to the district attorney's office to assist them with additional costs. So that's self-explanatory. Finance met twice on September 1st and the 10th. There's a number of resolutions in there for you from 353 and 354, which are supplemental appropriations. There'll be roll calls on both. Resolutions 400 to 413. If you turn to those, you'll see that 400 is approving the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board budget. 401 is Kevin here? Kevin Hajos? No Kevin Hajos today. That's a rarity. The guy is about as punctual and as dependable as they come. Are you on Zoom, Mr. Hajos?
He's always there.
Kevin, you're on Zoom? I see your name up there, but I don't see your face. Anyway, Kevin, if you are, just punch in when you can. There's an airport resolution authorizing the appropriation of funds from the airport reserve to the airport budget to cover the costs of the yellow pavement markings. We've discussed this before in the past. 402, that would be Marcy, but I don't think she's here today. That's authorizing assignment with Legal and Society of Northwestern New York to provide paralegal and case management support for services for indigent people for the assigned counsel. 403, that's another Kevin. Kevin, are you on now? No? Okay, I see your name, but you're not there. That's a buildings and finance, buildings and grounds authorization. That's 403, fairly self-explanatory. The same with 404 and 405, one from DPW, authorizing a fund project. 405 is Parks and Recreation. If there's any questions, if I'm going too fast, let me know, but they're all pretty fairly, like I said, self-explanatory. And now 406, Lexi's here, I know. Lexi, did you want to comment on 406? Where's Lexi? Did you want to make any comment on that's from Real Property and Tax Services?
I'm sorry, Lexi. This would have to be without objection. Does anyone have an objection? No, Mr. If you wouldn't mind, Lexi, thank you. We also have broadband and internet accessibility issues, so we sent a chat out to Kevin and let him know to weigh in when he can.
This resolution is just to authorize to move to appropriate the funds from the reserve testing fund to pay for the design plan for the abatement or for the asbestos and lead abatement of the Mosher's Garage property.
I know there's been a lot of discussion on that. Is there any questions from the board on that? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lexi. 407 is finance and tourism. Kevin, did you have any comments on that, Kevin Garrity?
No, it's just routine transfers.
Okay, thank you. 408, same thing, Mr. Garrity?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. 409 is from Mr. Swan. Did you have any comments on 409, Mr. Swan, our treasurer? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. These are 409, 410, and 411 are the three resolutions that we talked about in finance to authorize me to go out and borrow money for three different projects. One is the $700,000 to fund the repair of the wall in Bolton, $1 million for the continued repairs and maintenance at Countryside, and 6.2 million for highway projects. Questions, I guess. That's basically what they're for.
Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, okay, thank you very much.
And just as a reminder, we can have this discussion and
I'm
Q&A during resolutions.
I know,
Okay, thanks. Thank you,
I'm
Treasurer.
aware. Thanks, Mike. And 413, I think that's it. 413 is supporting SUNY Adirondacks budget. I think that's going to be fairly well accepted. So that's it. Executive committee did not meet, Madam Chairwoman, and that concludes the Finance, Government Ops, and Executive Committee reports.
Thank you, Supervisor Beatty. Supervisor Bramer, Personnel, Administration, and Higher Education, and our Septic Inspection Special Committee.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. First, I want to say thank you to all the public for attending. It's really nice to see people actually here in person again. And I'm sorry that you had to be here on an issue like this where you were very upset and concerned. I do want you to know that many people have been working in the background to try to find a solution. It just doesn't always get out there. And like the chairwoman said, we can definitely do a better job communicating that we are finding, working on solutions and trying to make that happen. I am the chair of the Personnel Committee, and I am committed to making sure that we find a way to maximize the current staff that we have at the meal sites, and also, like the chairwoman said, to really put an effort out there to fill those vacant positions, because the last thing that we want to do, at least that I want to do, is to shut down those meal sites. So we're doing everything that we can on this side to try to find solutions. And I just want to let you know that the chairwoman has worked very hard on that, as well as Supervisor Frazier, Hogan, and also, as you know, Beatty. But plus, behind the scenes is Administrator Moore, our purchasing agent, Julie Butler, as well as Dee Park in Office of the Aging. So there are moving parts right now because of the food supply chain shortages that it's still a real thing. So we're trying to work through that and come up with the solutions. In the past month, the Health Insurance Working Group has been meeting, and we do have a couple of resolutions for you today about the health insurance, dental, vision, as well as the voluntary life insurance policy for our county employees. Those are all really great benefits, so I hope you all support those. Also, as you already heard, we've been doing department head evaluations. That was a really great exercise, and I think came out with some good areas for improvement and really highlighted the great work that our department heads are doing. So I thank all the supervisors who came in for their committee meetings to participate, their committees that they oversee to participate in that process. The Personnel and Higher Education committees did meet on September 1st, and then we had a joint meeting with Washington County on September 10th. That was for the SUNY Adirondack. It's their capital infrastructure plan. It's not their full budget. That's in resolution 413. So I hope you will support that. And then our regular resolutions are in 393 through 399. I won't go through each of those. If there's any questions, we can take those at the discussion time. I do want to mention that this past week I was at NISAC, as the chairwoman mentioned, and I was able to chair the Resolutions Committee, which was pretty exciting for Warren County to have that representation. And we will be able to have the packet online so we can see what NISAC is pushing forward as a state-wide policy. And I think there's some things in there that we can take a look at for Warren County. And the last thing I want to mention is an award that was given to Supervisor Hogan from the Weowaka Center for the Mary Fuller Women Helping Women Award. And I just wanted to say congratulations and recognize you in public. Thank you. That's my report, Chairwoman.
Thank you. And congratulations Supervisor Hogan for that award. And also to Supervisor Bramer. It was an honor for all of us to have her as the chair of the Resolutions Committee at NISAC on behalf of the entire state. Supervisor Conover, Public Works.
Thank you. We met on April 24th. Represented in your packet by resolutions 385 through 388. I believe they're all self-explanatory, but on 385, it's basically an update of resolutions that were generated in 2008 relative to the acquisition of property. And 386 is to authorize our superintendent of public works to be able to approve payments for acquisition of property up to $10,000. And that's pretty much it. Yesterday, we had a joint meeting with public safety led by Jack Diamond, Supervisor Diamond. I said then, and I'll say now, attending the meeting was Connor Morgan and Kevin Morgan. I think they did, Connor did a really super job presenting his thoughts on e-bikes, and I think that that's moving in the right kind of direction, a very deliberative direction. And I just would commend Jack Diamond for his approach relative to this matter, and to also say that to Jack that if at the appropriate point in time you need some supervisors to meet with any local officials, give me a call.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Diamond, Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Public Safety met in August, which includes the Sheriff's Department and the Office of Emergency Services. In your packet today are the following resolutions. 373 is a Public Safety Office of Emergency Service authorizing an agreement with Grounded Glen Street to provide monthly stress management for first responders classes for the first responders working in Warren County for the Office of Emergency Services. That agreement is $150 per class with 2 additional one-year options. Resolution 374 is authorizing an agreement with emergency vehicle upfitters to provide vehicle equipment installation services for the Office of Emergency Services. Going forward, it's my impression that we do have an employee in the Sheriff's Department that has the abilities to do that. I'd like to look into that going forward, where we can just do it in-house rather than contracting out at this point in time. Resolution 375 is authorizing an agreement with Capital Digitronics to provide communication equipment repair and maintenance services for the Office of Emergency Services. Resolutions 376 through 381 are agreements with the Sheriff's Department to provide public law enforcement to the following school districts: Bolton's Central School District, Hadley Luzerne Central School District, Johnsburg Central School District, Lake George Central School District, North Warren's Central School District, and Queensbury Union Free School District. These are agreements that have been occurring on an annual basis with the Warren County Sheriff's Department. Resolution 382 is authorizing an agreement with Prime Care Medical of New York to provide medical behavioral health, dental, and ancillary service to inmates confined in the Warren County Jail. That's a 3-year agreement starting in 2022 and expiring in the end of 2024. Total cost is over $5 million. Warren County is required to provide these services. Resolution 383, ratifying the actions of the Warren County Sheriff in executing a grant application to the New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee for Child Passengers and Safety Program funding and authorizing a grant agreement for the same. Resolution 384 is appointing members of the Traffic Safety Board. That concludes my report, Chairwoman. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson with environmental concerns and real property taxes.
No report.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Driscoll, Extension Services and Human Services.
Thank you, Chairwoman. First, let me say how pleased I am to see some friends as well as colleagues that I've worked with in the past. Please remember that each of the 20 individuals sitting around the table have been duly elected, but we work for you. Again, we work for you. The Human Services Committee met last on August 23rd. There were a lot of good discussions, but no resolutions that came out of that meeting. At that time, we heard from Department of Social Services and the Countryside Adult Home up in Warrensburg. The next committee meeting will be this coming Monday, September 20th, on or about 10:35 a.m. We'll be hearing from Department of Social Services, Countryside, and Veteran Services. A lot of important information will be discussed at that meeting. I invite and encourage as many supervisors as possible to attend that. Cornell Cooperative Extension didn't meet over the last couple of months because of their youth fair as well as their golf tournament fundraiser. They will be meeting later this month. Each of the supervisors should have received the 2021 Economic Impact Statement on their desk this morning. And I'm sure if anyone is interested, you can go online to Cornell Cooperative Extension and get a copy of that report. Highlighted in that report, the Economic Impact Statement is an explanation of the new training facility, the Master Garden Volunteer Program, Nutrition and Healthy Living programs, the 4-H Youth Development programs, some parenting programs that they do throughout the county, and Roxanne Westcott does a great job with that. They all have it's all a great staff out there, as you know. Natural resources, and as I understand, a new initiative that's taking place probably as we speak in cooperation with Bob Busey and our probation department. So if you don't know as much about Cornell Cooperative Extension, they're serving everyone throughout Warren County of all ages and backgrounds, and they do great services. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Driscoll. Supervisor Frazier with Health Services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Health Services met on August the 23rd. As a result of that meeting, we have resolutions 367 through 372. 367 authorizes an agreement with Quadrant Biosciences to provide laboratory services to facilitate COVID testing to support schools and help maintain in-person instruction. 368 authorizes submission of an application to the New York State Department of Health for the Immunization Action Plan. 369 is accepting a donation from an anonymous source in memory of a patient. That amount is $125. 370 is authorizing a memorandum of understanding between Warren County Office for the Aging and Warren County Health Services to provide vaccinations to homebound people in Warren County. 371 is again authorizing a memorandum of understanding between Warren County for Office of the Aging and Hamilton County Department of Public Health to provide vaccinations to the homebound people in Hamilton County. And then 372 deals with authorizing agreement with Pure Foods, Mom's Meals to provide home delivered refrigerated meals to clients in Warren and Hamilton County for the Office of the Aging. And needless to say, you've heard about all the discussion that's gone on with that, but I do want to thank everyone who was involved in, putting forth this new resolution for today. With that said, I've asked Janelle Jones, who is a Director of Public Health, if she could give us a quick update on what's happening as far as the pandemic. And we do have 2 big events coming, which I'm sure are going to have some kind of impact on that. So thank you, Janelle.
Good morning, everybody, and good morning to the public. Thank you for being here. Public health continues with our COVID response, and we continue to recognize the importance of our community. Warren County is designated as a high prevalent county based on the CDC's metrics. We're actually 3 times their metrics, so we're a really high prevalent county. And with that comes recommendations for mask use inside for both vaccinated and unvaccinated. So I encourage everybody to think about their use of masks to try to protect themselves and their friends and family members. I also would like to encourage everybody to be vaccinated. Those that aren't vaccinated, I'd like, to encourage people to reach out to their providers and try to come up with maybe which product might be best, or if you truly shouldn't receive the vaccine. At this time, our county has 66% fully vaccinated people, which is really awesome. That's 7th highest in the state. It's the 2nd highest in the capital region. However, it's not good enough for me. If you know, I have my stickers that say we're shooting for 100%. And I've said at meetings that I'd be happy to maybe settle at 90%. So we still have work to go. And you all know that we're a tourist community. So when tourists come in, if they're not vaccinated, that waters down our percentage rate if they're coming from areas of low vaccination rates. I am encouraging mask use indoors, like I said. And also for people to stay home and get tested if they're symptomatic. That is such a revolving theme. A lot of the cases that we've been working with lately have been sick, have had symptoms, have actually felt that they've had allergies, and they've been like in school for a week with allergy symptoms. And then we obviously then have to look at quarantining whole classrooms, which isn't what we want to do. And then I also want to kind of thank the public for their cooperation, their continued cooperation with our quarantines and isolations. It's not fun for us, it's not fun for them, but we appreciate their effort and their sacrifice doing that to help us help keep the community safe. And with that, I'd like to also kind of mention for those that are vaccinated, there are exposures that still happen. And even though you're vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine. I'd like to encourage the public and the people in this room that if you are vaccinated, you are exposed. There is a CDC recommendation that you should be tested 3 to 5 days after that exposure, because we have seen probably 30 to 50% of our cases every day. They're vaccinated people that have come down with COVID. And unfortunately, we have to look at their exposure. So let's say I'm vaccinated. Let's say I go to school. Let's say I come down with COVID. I'm still infectious to those unvaccinated people around me. And some of the vaccinated people can still come down with COVID. As far as upcoming events, we have a lot of exciting things coming to our area. And while I reluctantly support them, I know that I miss them just as much as everybody else does. I just want to say, when people go, I want to encourage people that if they're sick, they need to stay home. That's selfish for people that are sick to go out into the community, especially at big, large events. Distancing if possible, wearing masks. Again, if you're in a crowded area, you don't know all the people that you're around, you don't know their vaccination status, the best thing you can do to protect yourself and others is to wear a mask. And then it's not too late to get vaccinated. We have a lot of clinics coming up. They'll be posted on our website, posted in the media. You can call Warren County Health Services. We'll be happy to tell you when our next clinic is. I can tell you we have a standing clinic every Tuesday at the Human Services Building. We thank Chris Hanchett for working with us to provide that space and make it available to us, 4:30 to 6:30 on Tuesdays throughout September, in addition to many other clinics that we're offering. We've also seen a lot of activity in the schools. We've seen it with sports. And again, the CDC has recommended that we not have high-risk sports when we're in a high prevalent zone. We've, got a lot of schools with high-risk sports going on, and we're starting to see a lot of activity. It's riding on buses with positive players or coaches or bus drivers. We're seeing classrooms, we're seeing recesses, we're seeing all kinds of things in the schools. We've been very busy since the start of school, working with schools with between 8 and 12 cases a day, working with schools and doing those school investigations. I would like to thank everybody again for their continued support and just encourage people to get vaccinated if they haven't, and to please try to wear their mask when they can to help prevent the spread. Flu vaccination is coming up. Our agency is going to be offering flu clinics to the public, as long, pharmacies are doing that as well. Doctors' offices are doing that as well. If we can protect against flu, we can protect against COVID, our community is going to be in a much better state. I don't like the fact that we've got a high prevalence rate right now. I want to knock that down. And I want to be the best county in our community as far as not having cases. So if you guys could help me with that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janelle. We appreciate that. And that's my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you Supervisor Frazier. Supervisor Garrity, Tourism and OCTAX.
Tourism met on August 24th. We have 4 resolutions in your packet. First one is for the printing of the 2022 travel guide. Second one is authorizing hire of Granicus to check up on the short-term rentals in each community. We should get a listing on short-term rentals. That should be helpful in collection of oxy tax. The third one we're very proud of, Resolution 391, is funding Special Olympics, the fall games in Glens Falls for the next 3 years. And we're very excited to have the Special Olympians coming to Glens Falls. I think it's a great event. And I'm just pleased that we were able to fund it for the next 3 years with oxy tax. And 392 is adopting one of our forms, and we've been working on now for basically 3 or 4 months, and we finally adopted a form for the grading criteria for the application of oxy tax funding. And those are my 4 resolutions, and I'll wait to comment on 372 at the proper time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hogan, Economic Growth and Development.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too will wait to comment on 372 until we're discussing resolutions. But I do want to say that I am always proud of my community, both the town and the county. I am never more proud, though, than when the members of the public come to share their thoughts with us. So thank you all for your time and your patience and your perseverance. Economic Growth and Development met on August 23rd. We have 363 through 365 in front of you. I hope you'll support those. I just want to point out that 409 is authorizing the capital improvements at Countryside, and remind you all that these will be matched by funds that were obtained through grants written through the planning department. These improvements are very important to our seniors, and I hope you'll support 409 as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Leggett, Criminal Justice.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Criminal Justice met on August 23rd. Before you are resolutions 355 through 362. 3 of them are from the district attorney. 5 of them are from the public defender. Also in your packet related to criminal justice is referred items. That was to personnel, resolution number 393, and referred to finance, resolution number 402 from assigned counsel. On 355 is the request to submit for a grant aid to prosecution. 356 is submission of grant from the district attorney as well, crimes against revenue prosecution grant. And 357, amending a resolution to retain the services of a primary backup transcriber. Public defender has before us a submission for Upstate Family Defense for quality improvement and caseload reduction grant. An innovative grant that's well needed. Number 359 from public defender to enroll in a program for representing indigent parents involved in child protective welfare proceedings. This should help fill a gap. 360 from public defender authorizing a modification of the agreement for Office of Indigent Legal Services. There's some bookkeeping here. 361 authorizing a lease agreement. This is for the new office space at 333 Glen Street. It's just to include janitorial services, and the next one, 362, is for internet services. They do hope to be into that new building starting on October 1st. That's it for the committee meetings. As the chairwoman had mentioned, I too also attended the NISAC conference. I sit on the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee, which put resolutions in front of the Supervisor Bramer's committee. Also attended department head evaluations for criminal justice departments, And a quick report as Vice Chairman of the IDA. We have accepted the Canal Side Energy Park Opportunity Analysis Study. This is for the old dewatering site down in Fort Edward. We're making progress on being able to get this put out there and put to a good use. And this was a foundational step IDA has taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bruno, you're Vice Chair of County Facilities, and I also wanted to let you know that Superintendent Hajos is on the line if you need him to update on anything.
Great, appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. County facilities, which includes the airport, buildings and grounds, fire prevention and building code enforcement, and weights and measures, met on August 24th. We had a couple of items that were referred to Finance Committee, which appear as resolutions 401 and 403. I won't go into those. There were other referrals to personnel, administration, higher education to fill vacant positions. I'm not aware of those being included here yet. Regarding those positions, we discussed there's some difficulty retaining people in some of these positions, such as cleaners, like the grade 2 and maintenance worker. It appears that this may be due to those salaries being lower than the average for the region. I'm sorry. I don't know if Mr. Hajos wants to comment on either the resolution 401 or 403 or the referrals regarding filling the vacant positions. Are you there, Kevin?
I am here.
Did you care to add anything or?
So for 401, I'll go through them real quick because I know they were referred to finance, and I apologize. I was on a phone call when they were being discussed by Supervisor Beatty. 401 is basically the FAA came in and did their typical yearly inspection, and we had some striping that we necessarily didn't budget for. So this is the 401 was to cover the cost of the striping. 403 was to finalize the last, I guess, invoice that we had for the swap out the generator at the Human Services Building, which is now 100% complete. But there was a National Grid had to come in and do a power shutdown on a weekend, and of course we were charged for that to pay for those times. So that's what those two resolutions resulted in. The final that you talked about filling positions, I guess I don't want to go through it because I probably beat a dead horse over and over again with this, but the bottom line is we are having a hard time finding people to fill the positions, and it's not just unique to cleaners or the building maintenance workers. Some of the MEO positions and such I have it. It's really difficult to find qualified individuals to do it because most of the people who are qualified, especially for the MEO positions that have a CDL, they're getting paid to work in, they're getting paid more and they're working at other places. So that is something I've discussed with the county administrator, and I think it's something that would probably open up a negotiation with the union again, and but that's not, it's a discussion to have with the administrator and the chairwoman to see where we go from here.
Thank you. I just mentioned additionally, we discussed the status of the snow removal building at the airport. For those of you who are not familiar with that, that is a new building to, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ajos, to store snow removal equipment.
That is correct. That will be used for our plow trucks as well as our sweepers and such and the snow blower that we use during snow and ice operations.
Right, and that's about 60–70% complete, I believe.
So it's probably right around 70% as of right now. I'll bring some information to committee this month regarding that project.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any other things we discussed were the Balloon Festival and Nexamp. That's the company that is looking for a contract to install a solar array, solar panels on some of the property, correct?
That is correct. And they're, we already have a contract with them. They're actually in the design phase of that project now. And the Balloon Fest, of course, as all of you know, it's going to happen next weekend. And I guess I was going to wait for announcements, but since you're allowing me to talk, anybody willing to volunteer, I sent out a list. I'd be happy. And I think Supervisor Driscoll, thank you for saying you could work, I believe, Friday night.
Thank you, Mr. Hagos, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. And another great attempt at teamwork here on this board. We all like to volunteer and keep our overtime costs low for the Balloon Festival. So that schedule is out, and please feel free to respond to our superintendent. Supervisor Merlino, Parks Operations and Management.
Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman. As you all know, I've been out a couple of months, and I just want to thank Supervisor Dickinson for filling in for me. And like I said, I'm back, and I'm going to try to get back into what I normally do. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Thomas, our budget.
Thank you, Chairwoman Sieber. The Budget Committee did not meet this past month. However, as you heard from the Chairwoman and our County Administrator, there's been a lot of meetings this past month. I've met with all the departments. They've all submitted their budgets. Their budgets have been finally submitted, after adjustments. And currently we're 610,000 below the tax cap. However, we have not accounted for any personnel improvements or changes, so we have a ways to go, and we'll have to adjust and cut here and add a little revenue there, and hopefully we'll land in a good place. And I do anticipate that may possibly after finance and personnel on September 30th, we'll have a budget committee meeting. My report.
Thank you, Budget Officer Thomas. At this point in time, our county administrator just has one more item to add to his previous report regarding the census.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I spoke to this already. I can't recall if it was at the last personnel meeting or if it was at the last board meeting. And I hope it doesn't get into beating a dead horse, but I just want to speak to the process of revising the weighted vote for this board, because it is a very important issue that we're required to do. There's a court-ordered process for how it needs to be done. And we'll talk about this again. My goal is to get this to the next personnel committee meeting. This is all done by a local law. The local law is subject to permissive referendum. So if we're going to have the new weighted votes in place for the beginning of next year, which we should, work backwards for 45 days, we need a local law adopted at the November board meeting. That means we need a local law introduced at the October board meeting. So it's going to go through the next round of committee meetings. Here's what we're required to do. There's two foundational questions here. In our existing local law, it's local law number 12 of 2011. If anybody wants to take a look at it, we can pull it for you and send it to you. There is a threshold that determines when there's a population threshold that determines when you have to go to a second supervisor, when one supervisor is essentially representing too much of the population. That population threshold right now is 5,580. That's in the current local law. If you multiply 5,580 by 5, 5 is significant because it's the number of Queensbury supervisors we currently have. You get 27,900. The new Queensbury census figure is 29,169. So right out of the box, we have a situation where if we use the threshold that's in the current local law, it's going to mandate that Queensbury goes up to 6 supervisors. So the decision that this board needs to make first and foremost is whether or not to revise that threshold so that Queensbury stays at 5, or do we let Queensbury go to 6? The good news is that there is as I said, there's case law on this that dictates how this process needs to be done, and there's a mathematical computation that would need to be done. What we would do is we would run the new weighted votes apportioned by the census in a scenario where Queensbury has 6 supervisors. And we would also run a scenario with the new weighted votes apportioned by the census and keeping Queensbury at 5. Mike Colvin has to put both of those scenarios into the computer. a scenario with 21 supervisors, and a scenario with 20 supervisors. Computer's going to generate every possible combination there is of yes, no votes. There's 2 million over here and there's 1 million over here, and then some. It's not exact numbers. And then he's got to isolate down all of the winning combinations where a question can pass. All of the combinations of the way all of you vote where a question can pass. Then he's got to take a look at every time when if a supervisor in that winning coalition switches their vote to no, where that supervisor could make that decision and be the deciding vote to make a measure fail. You count up all the times that can happen for every supervisor, every opportunity that each and every one of you have to be the swing vote, if you will. You take your, like, let's say Mr. Conover, the first one on my right. You take the number of times he has to be the swing voter divided by the overall number of times that all of you are the swing voter, and that's his percentage. That's called his Banzhaf Power Index. You can't make this stuff up. And a court ruled on this. That's called his Banzhaf Power Index. You take the difference between his power index and the percentage of the population of the county that he represents, and that's his differential. We look at every single one of your differentials, take the highest positive number minus the highest absolute value negative number, and that's the number at the end of the day that we're looking at. So the courts have ruled, and Robert is doing a lot of legal research on this. The courts have ruled what number is fair and what number is not fair. I can tell you that a 6% difference has been ruled to be fair, and Robert has additional information that he'll get to all of you. But what we're going to be doing at the end of the day is we're going to be looking at what is that number under our current weighted vote structure with the old population, and what is that number, that bottom line number under both of those scenarios with the new population. And we'll be making some decisions in light of the case law as to what it is that we want to do. So it's a very complex process. It's a very important process. It's a process that we need to get right, because the reason this case law exists is in 1967, I believe Washington County and Saratoga County's weighted votes were thrown out and invalidated. Their weighting vote scheme was invalidated, and those boards had to mid-year figure out something else that then had to pass muster with the court. So it's very important we get it right. And this is why I keep mentioning this. I want everybody to understand what the process is before we get into it.
Thank you. And I believe then, as our administrator indicated, we'll have a lengthy discussion coming up at our committee meeting. County Attorney Twilliger.
Good morning. In addition to attending the last round of committee meetings, I was also privileged to be in on the meeting yesterday of the joint Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting chaired by Supervisor Diamond. That's a very productive meeting. I really enjoy seeing how that'll play out as we examine the viability of allowing electronic assist bicycles on the Warren County Bikeway. Earlier this week on Monday, Tuesday, the 13th and 14th, I was able to attend the County Attorney Association of New York State annual meeting. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to attend that. A couple interesting seminars there. One was on how Executive Law Section 94C is supplanted Article 10 of the Public Service Law, and where that comes into effect for us here in the county is that it provides a newer and somewhat easier mechanism for citing alternative energy projects within municipalities. The state and federal government seem to be very interested in allowing those to happen, and they've kind of state, especially through this change in the executive law, has somewhat streamlined the process a bit for allowing like solar and wind energy projects to be cited in areas and to be built. Also, another interesting seminar was on defending civil rights section 1983 cases, which is something that affects every municipality on that. Also, this week, a couple of days ago on the 15th, Judge offered to assign the tax foreclosure judgment for 2021, the real property tax foreclosure one. So there is a court order now in effect on that, foreclosing on the final remaining properties which had not paid taxes and are delinquent. We're doing a deed now, which the Treasurer Swan will then sign and formally convey those properties to Warren County. And then those properties will be available for the auction in October. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Reading of communications.
Warren County Probation Reports of Criminal and Family Workloads for the month of July 2021. Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp. 2020 Regular Benefit Distribution Number 22 in the amount of $1,631. Town of Lake George Resolution Number 122 of 2021 entitled Decision on 2022 Sales Tax Funds at County. And a resolution from the town of Johnsburg entitled Resolution Opposing the Long-Term Use of a Mail Delivery System to Provide Meals to Seniors and Opposing the Closure of Congregate Meal Sites.
Yep. All right. At this point in time, we'll move on to the reading of resolutions.
Resolution numbers 353 through 413 were distributed to the board and posted to the Warren County website on Monday, September 13th, which met the distribution deadline specified in the rules of the board. Resolution number 372 was revised and redistributed to the board on Thursday, September 16th. As that did not meet the distribution deadline, a motion is needed to approve the revisions to resolution number 372 as described by Mr. Moore earlier in the meeting.
Thank you. That motion I see is made by Supervisor Driscoll.
Yep.
Thank you. And seconded by Supervisor Frazier. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That carries. Thank you. So that is now resolution. It's still the same number. Okay, great. Thank you. So let's move on to our discussion of resolutions. At this point in time, Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. 372.
372. Thank you.
Again, I want to thank everyone who's turned out today to discuss this with us. It's really appreciated, every one of you. I want to be very, very clear. 372 reflects a serious compromise. It reflects what we would do in the extent of an extreme failure of our supply chain systems. It does not reflect our intent or what we think is a good idea even. We all recognize, every one of us, and I'm going out on a limb to speak for all of us, that home delivered meals are not our best option here, or not home delivered, but you know what I mean, mailed meals are not our best option here. And everyone in this room is dedicated to making sure that that is only a last resort. That said, I sit through meeting after meeting, week after week, listening to discussions on supply chain disruption and problems with our workforce. The county is not immune to these problems. We're in it with all of our businesses and all of the other institutions in the area. Occasionally, something might happen. And 372 is making sure that we are prepared to meet the nutritional needs at least, of our seniors should a severe failure of supply chain happen. But we will do everything we can to not have to go to that. And for the towns that have already had to do that, we're all in this together. And we encourage all of you to let us know how we can help you meet the needs of your seniors during this dire time when they do have to take those meals. You heard from Johnsburg, we're here, we're willing to help. Let us know how we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion as it relates to 372? Supervisor Bramer, then Supervisor Garrity.
I just wanted to quickly echo that. I think you do speak for the full board on that. And I wanted to say earlier, and I forgot to, thank you to the volunteers who have been doing the driving. We really appreciate your time and all of your effort. And hopefully this whole thing has provided some more awareness of the program so that more volunteers will come out and we can get more people signed up to receive the meals as well. So I'm looking at it as on that side as a positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Garrity.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, you know, the two communities, Chestertown and Warrensburg, did some investigation, and we did have one person step up yesterday and come to our office about wanting to go back to work or go to work at Countryside to help out with that situation. But I'd like to reiterate what Mr. Casella said. And I had a call from a constituent, not in my community, but somebody I've known for a long time, concerned about the 5-day-a-week, needing to go 5 days a week into the house to check in on the people. And it's very, very important. And, you know, I've delivered once or twice before. I know we delivered Thanksgiving time from our fire company, but it is important that you get around to see the people on a daily, at least 5 days a week. So I think that should be our number one priority. And then putting down the barriers, because Countryside should have the opportunity to be able to produce all the meals for the two communities at one time in that kitchen up there at Countryside. We got to figure out why we can't go back to doing that and getting them out to our constituents. But, you know, this is a very short-term gap, I believe, and I want to thank the staff for coming to this conclusion, but it's not something that we want to go forward. I think we all share that. Thank you.
Supervisor Merlino, then Supervisor Beatty, then Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As far as Town of Lake Luzerne, I'm happy with what's going on. I've been in contact with Dee Park. She's done a great job keeping me up on it. And Supervisor Hogan, also your persuasion for me to take care of some of the stuff. But yeah, I think that 5-day situation with meals has to really be changed. It lessened the burden on the art center, but I think we should go back to it because these people need. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in my senior center, especially last year when I couldn't get any help cooking meals 3 straight months just to get the seniors what they need. And it's important. It's important that we get in, knock on their door, get inside. And a lot of them just, I was listening to some of these people, yep, they want to give you a hug, they want to give you a kiss, and they're just happy that we're there. Just to talk to them for 2 or 3 minutes means a lot to them. So I'm full support of this change. And I think we got a little bit more to do in the progress of this stuff, but it'll definitely work out. And anyone needs Town of Lake Luzerne's help in the senior center, making meals or something, I think we can accommodate a few here and there if you really need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think it's pretty well said that this was a major issue. Seniors and kids, that's what we're paid to do, is protect them. And I'd like to thank a lot of the people on this board for stepping up, which I felt was somewhat of a crisis situation. I definitely want to thank the seniors for coming, the volunteers, Virginia, Beatrice, Arthur, Frank O'Keefe's been calling me regularly. He's you know, I get calls from Frank now. I think I'm a mayor of Glens Falls, as he was a former mayor. I feel like now I'm the mayor of Glens Falls because he calls me so often. But the fact that they all felt the need to reach out and be heard, because not for themselves, but for their fellow seniors. Notice not one of them said for themselves, not one of them. They're all concerned about other seniors and how the food they're getting, the quality of the food. And by the way, I had 3 of those meals. I had about a bite each of 3, and that's all I could take. Nothing against Mom's Meals, but that was below par in my opinion. Now, I tried to arrange 20 meals today for everyone to eat. Dee couldn't help me on that. She tried, couldn't do it, but I wanted each of you to try the food, then tell me what you thought. But anyway, that didn't happen. But again, these seniors are looking out for their fellow neighbors and helping their neighbors. They're not doing it for themselves. So let's all be aware of that. And in the future, let's be a little more proactive and let's get things done. And not accomplishing a goal is not acceptable. Not where I came from in the business world, and definitely not in the public sector when you're taking care of kids and you're taking care of seniors. So thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Supervisor Leggett and Supervisor Scheffler.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'll follow up with what Supervisor Beatty said here about the goal. This meeting is reminiscent of several years ago when the supervisors had asked the director of the OFA to cut costs, and she came in with a plan, and it was related to Cedars, and there was a big turnout. And I think this is the second biggest turnout that we have had in my 6 years here. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for expressing your concerns about programs of the county. As everybody had said, we listen to you and we serve you. So thank you for being here. The goal, as was expressed by the speakers, is more than just delivering food, but it is checking in on the people and being there. The town of Chester has a meal site that's about the size of this room. as the kitchen, as a congregate meal site. It is easily accessible to many, and we deliver food up into Horicon from that meal site, as well as in the town of Chester, up into Pottersville. That beginning in January, staffing was rearranged. Once again, it was for economic reasons, because that has been the goal, I do believe, that was expressed from this board to the Office for the Aging, meet certain economic benchmarks. And with that, we now have no meal site happening. We're having delivered meals coming in from Ohio, delivered to our residents. So I think it is incumbent upon this board to really set realistic goals for the Office of the Aging and be prepared to fund it accordingly as well. The office, the meal site in the town of Chester is free to the county. We used to receive money from the county, but that was taken away years ago. We pay for the heat, we pay for the lights. The county pays for the gas for the stove, but that's it. But all the cost of the refrigeration, air conditioning, heating in the wintertime, cleaning, etc., was all taken up by the town of Chester, as well as extra help. The meal site at the town of Chester has had a manager there. She's with us, Linda. Nice to see you. Thank you for coming today. A cook, and then the town also hired a part-time person to help out above and beyond. So the town of Chester has always been committed to this program. And it's funny that we've ended up on this short end of the stick, it seems, where our customers, our clients, our residents are getting delivered meals from Ohio. So thank you for everybody for the work on the resolution that is before us. It has come out well. I know a lot went into it, and I really look forward to as we move ahead with this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Shepler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd like to also thank all the public who came out today and shared their experiences with Meals on Wheels. I have had the opportunity and the privilege to deliver Meals on Wheels with my husband in the past. And much of what was discussed today by the public is factual. I would like to suggest that perhaps maybe all of the Warren County supervisors take the opportunity to experience this and volunteer your services once a month, whatever your calendar will bear, but get out there and experience the Meals on Wheels delivery process and the program. Have an opportunity to meet with your community and your constituents, see what their needs are, talk with them. We in Thurman are very fortunate. We have a driver who will be reinstituting his route, his 3 days a week, and will be visiting with the community and the members who he normally delivers meals for during this time of transition from mom's meals, hopefully back to the regular situation. So thank you very much. And again, I applaud all of you. Thank you very much.
Further discussion by our supervisors on 372. Supervisor Stroud.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad the seniors came out, Mr. Yanati. I looked through my emails. I didn't see yours. I will get back to my office and look at that. Well, I did.
got a receipt for all 5 of you.
All right, well, I did not send the receipt. Okay.
Automatic.
And sometimes it gets put in certain folders, and I'll take a look when I get back to my office. But on 372, Deep Park, the director of Office for the Aging, I think is doing a stellar job, a wonderful job. She has very tough situations to deal with. COVID, supply problems, personnel problems. She's trying to gather all she can. Mom's meal was a backup. But I do appreciate the seniors for coming here. They are upmost in my book as to who I have to pay attention to. So I want to thank you. And I enjoyed listening to you and I heard you. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on 372. Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, thank you. And it's to be brief. I'll just not repeat what everyone said, but to me, it's so important to have the public here to give us their input. But secondarily, and the reason why I wanted to speak was, how long is it going to take us to bring this back to a 5-day program? You know, we always look at cutting costs and being most efficient with the taxpayers' dollars. But when you look at this from a human standpoint, there's no value you can put on this in terms of the benefits that receive, right? If a senior is in trouble, they don't have someone coming into their home. And I know this because my mother-in-law received these benefits, not this county, another county. But it was heartwarming for us to know that there was someone checking on her every day, or at least 5 days a week. So what's the problem with us moving it to 5 days a week? I know we have staffing issues. We should be able to fix that. We should be able to make this a priority. I'm just looking for the rest of the peers on the board to say, let's make this a priority and move forward with it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure. Are you, typically during our board meetings, those questions are addressed to the chair. I'm happy to answer them, but I would ask our county administrator to answer you directly regarding that.
Sure. Let me give you what my understanding is of the current daily operations of each meal site. And this is based on information from last Friday, so it may or may not still be accurate. I have to defer to the Office for the Aging Director to confirm that. But I believe in Bolton, we're cooking 5 days a week. We're not cooking in Chester and Warrensburg, and that's because of staffing. And as we've stated today, we're working very hard to get interest in those positions. And I think Supervisor Garrity spoke to that as well. We did a press release this morning also before 9 o'clock, trying to drum up interest in the community in these positions. Forgot to mention that earlier. In Cedars, I believe we're cooking 5 days a week. In Johnsburg, we're cooking 5 days a week. In Luzerne, we're cooking 3 days a week. That's because that site is currently staffed by a sub. In Indian Lake over in Hamilton County, we're cooking 5 days a week. Lake Pleasant and Wells, I believe, share functions and they're cooking 5 days a week. And in Long Lake, we're cooking 5 days a week. So that's my understanding of the current status.
Thank you. And I just want to let our public here know that we go through a little bit of debate on resolutions before us, and then we come back to the public before we go to vote, so that anyone that has any comments about resolutions before us, there is another privilege of the floor at the end of the meeting for any topic you desire. Is there any further discussion on 372 before we move on to another resolution? I just, as chair, I know unless I step down, I'm not able to debate at length. So I just briefly want to mention that it is my understanding that this has never been about cutting cost recently, that this is about being able to find the demand and the supply and continuing to meet our staffing needs. Rest assured that we are going to work as this board incredibly hard with our community and our staff to make sure that we allot the funding that we need to allot to continue those deliveries. And to work with our partners in our community. And we can't do that without the volunteers that also deliver these meals, but we can supplement with staff as well. So we are aggressively going after those job searches and also going to continue allotting those dollars and utilizing the American Rescue Plan Act funds as well. That's what they're for. They're here to respond to a crisis. And because of the pandemic, we've had multiple hurdles to be jumping, and we're hopeful that we can resolve that. County Administrator?
Yeah, let me pick up on a technical point on cost. Any way we do the meal program under the current challenges, it's going to be more expensive. We're hopeful with Cisco, but Cisco is going to be more expensive than we paid with US Foods. That's because of the market. The food is more expensive, delivery costs are more expensive, et cetera. if we, on the option we were looking at back on August 23rd of potentially having to do mom's meals for 12 months, that was going to be more expensive than the traditional meal program. So this has never been motivated out of a desire to cut costs. And I want everybody to understand that no matter how you do it, under the current circumstances, is going to be more expensive. But that's not what motivates us. What motivates us is trying to keep the program as similar to what it has been and to the quality that the seniors have come to expect. And whatever that costs, as the chairwoman said, we could potentially have American Recovery Plan dollars we could put towards that. But that's the commitment we make to our community, that we will provide services and we will fund it the way it needs to be done.
Thank you. Discussion on other resolutions before we go to privilege of the floor on resolutions. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I just wanted to mention too, 390 and 391, Chairman Garrity of that committee, tourism, already said about how great it is that we'll have Special Olympics here. I just wanted to reiterate that. And also on 390 with Granicus, I know that our community in Glens Falls is looking forward to being able to utilize that contract under the umbrella of the county. So I hope that you guys will all support that, because I think Queensberry, and I know Lake George is already using it, and Queensberry is looking into doing that too. So I hope that you guys will support it out of that committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on 390?
It's 390, the relative to
Supervisor Conover.
thank you. Relative to the question on tourism, just an update to the board that we did. The town of Bolton Town Board did adopt short-term rental regulations at its last meeting. And one of the requirements of that is that before we issue a permit, the applicant has to demonstrate that they have registered with the county relative to this program. And there are other requirements to the program, but that's foundationally an important element of the program. So hopefully that will be of assistance in ensuring that at least the STRs in Bolton are registered with my.
Thank you. Other comments on 390? Hearing none, I'll close comments for 390. 391, Supervisor Bramer also mentioned. Is there, did you have further comments on that? You mentioned both resolutions, Supervisor Bramer. Or are there any discussion items on 391? Hearing none. Other resolutions for discussion today? Supervisor Straub.
Yes, 392. 392 is the adoption of a funding evaluation strategy, grading criteria, and scoring sheet and application for Warren County occupancy tax grant funding. My concern has been and remains that this structure, as it's being presented, is too stringent, too cumbersome, too bureaucratic for our nonprofits, our museums, our young startups, our small organizations that want to do something. You're asking them to do something that would be hugely, again, to repeat myself, cumbersome. So I will be voting no on 392 because of those reasons.
Thank you, Supervisor Stroud. Just a point of clarification, 392 is as it relates to the municipal supplemental funding evaluation strategy. That is only as it relates to each town coming to the board, asking for additional funding above and beyond their 25%, like Supervisor Smith did for the tents for Food Truck Fridays, and Supervisor Johnsburg did with a marketing plan out of there. So this is not the general wide application for those coming to the board asking for not-for-profits and whatnot. That was passed last month. So this one before us right now is only as it relates to the municipalities and our hopes that we're able to fully support all of those different events that every single one of our supervisors want to bring forward that covers the entire county. So those applications are only filled out by our town supervisors and in conjunction, of course, with those requests that you have from your community. So hopefully that will be helpful. Supervisor Hogan, you had a comment on 392.
Thank you. Yes, I shared your concerns as it related to municipalities coming and asking for these funds. So I took the information that I used in the ask for our marketing plan and plugged it into the new application. And it wasn't too cumbersome. It actually was a really good, thoughtful process where I was very conscious of the requirements of the law, and I made sure that my ask met the requirements of the law. So I support this.
Thank you. Further discussion on 392. Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, just for the county attorney and the county administrator going forward. The definition of supplemental funding, if it in fact is funding beyond the formula funding that's in the legislation, the list excludes capital projects as an eligible activity. At least I believe it does. Correct me if it does not. Okay, good. I was going to point out that we have provided supplemental funding for capital improvements elsewhere. And I'm just, I don't think it's the intent of the board to exclude eligible capital. But go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'll read from this is,
Please do.
I'm sorry. Let me, there's actually page 2. It's attached to the resolution. It's all the way down to the bottom. Expenditures may also be made and considered for capital projects which facilitate uses by tourists and or increases tourism to an area by enhancing the environment, improving infrastructures related to tourism, conventions, sports, special events, trade shows, and developing, operating, and maintaining tourist attractions.
Okay, one of the earlier versions, though, as I remember, did not include.
That may have been, but it went through
Okay.
several iterations, and this is one that passed to the committee.
All right, good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Supervisor Conover, just to address that question, also in a little more detail, page 9 of your packet on 392 of 221 also discusses when spending funds for capital projects, it's necessary that the primary benefit and end result of the project is to increase, enhance, promote tourism and tourist activities. Funding of capital projects that predominantly benefit residents and only incidental promotes tourism should be avoided. And then it goes on to just do a please note, it's not an all-inclusive list. So I do think it's mentioned both on page 2 and page 9. Thank you. Further discussion on 392. Okay, hearing none, we'll close the conversation on 392. Any other resolutions before the board today that you would like to discuss? No? At this point in time, I'm sorry, Supervisor Strauss. What resolution?
394.
394.
394 is a court obligation to pay the additional amount to Forest Enterprises. I mean, I don't like paying that additional amount, but that was a court order. And again, it deals with the expansion of the airport, which was a great idea. And the vast majority of this board agreed that expansion and improvement of that airport was a great idea. Now, you go back to 1948 when Queensbury School System, which we call it now, bought the 106 acres that was the Warren County Airport. They had vision for the future. They knew of expansion. There was no immediate need for that, but they looked forward to the future. And the same thing, when they moved the airport down into the valley, farther into the valley, because the larger cumbersome airplanes had a difficult time with the airport as it was located where the school is now, because it was too close to the mountains to gain the necessary lift and altitude for safety. So again, and safety was one of the issues in dealing with the improvement of the runway. And, we had Tim Maloney, these are the experts from Saratoga Aviation, Greg Bean from Heritage Flight, John Watzig, Director of Operation of Citation Shares, Al Ball, manager, all of them who know about the 60% rule for passenger jets and so forth, but also for safety and everything else. All of them said this improvement to the airport is a good thing. All right. So I understand there's politics involved and people who may not agree with that. However, those are the experts. And so And if you look at the economic impact that this airport has on our general area, the 2002 study found the airport brought in an additional 4.2 million annually that benefited the economy of the local region. A 2010 study said with 37 part-time, full and part-time jobs and 6.6 million in expenditures, the impact was 8.3 million. So this airport and that infrastructure, and I could go on, as you know, I put together a statement of my position back in 2016, but the vision for the future. This is a piece of property, not only is it court ordered that we have to pay this, but it is also a way to look at improvements to the future. Should a future board wish to improve the airport, and the economic impact, as I've stated, is very important to what goes on to this region. So I think that you have to vote yes on 394 for a variety of reasons. That's my position.
Thank you. Further discussion on 394? Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah. 394, this board made a number of mistakes. We all know it. We tried to take a man's land through eminent domain. The FAA never approved of the runway 1,000-foot extension that was going to spend up to $12 million of taxpayer dollars. What a waste. 6 years, a few supervisors kept digging in, myself, Westcott, Travis Whitehead, a few other supervisors, Claudia Bramer, just to name a few, there's a few other ones, because it was a waste of the taxpayer money. So, you know, I love a good story, but that's what it is. It's a story. The fact of the matter is when the information was presented to the FAA, they said, and I quote, "It is not needed." It is not needed. If Warren County wants to spend 12 million, go ahead. But we, the federal government and the state, will not spend the money to fund something that's not needed. And so, you know, this was an order by the court to say, hey, you guys took a man's land through eminent domain, not needed, but you didn't even pay enough for it, Warren County. You spent 328,000. By the way, you need to spend another 220 because you didn't spend enough. So we're going to spend over $500,000, court ordered, taking a man's land that was never needed out at the airport because some of the members of this board thought it was a good idea. Well, now the taxpayers are paying for it in Warren County. And I am never for it. I was 100% against it. And this is just another quote unquote boondoggle. And I know Mr. Garrity likes that term. I had to use it. That shows when we make bad decisions, the taxpayers end up paying. So I don't know how I'll vote because it is court ordered, but I'll probably vote no based on the fact that I just can't keep encouraging bad decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I was opposed to the airport extension project. I do want to say, though, that the airport is a great asset, and we've been able to see that even without the extension, we're having a large increase in the demand for hangars at the airport. The airport is being utilized, and it's great. I look forward to volunteering at the Balloon Festival next weekend. So I am going to vote for this. It is court ordered, and I hope that the rest of the board will vote for it as well, even though we may not agree with the underlying purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Conover.
Thank you. I've said this before, and you don't need to believe me. You can search it on the internet yourself or any of the resource. There isn't anything more important if you're going to be in the airport business than the protection of the land areas around the airport and the protection of your navigation easements. It's critically important. You don't need to look very far at airports where the development is pushed in on the airports, and you have a constituency now opposed to expansion of those airport activities or a certain type of planes coming in or change in flight paths, because that's what happens. And so the acquisition of property and the protection of navigation easements, very important going forward. No one has a perfect crystal ball in this regard. The FAA was supportive of the expansion, then they recast the numbers, then they withdrew that support. When they withdrew that support, of course, they withdrew the funding, which is very significant. It's the lion's share of the funding, which comes from the passenger tickets that are part of aviation. So I think long-term, I think it's very important that we protect land areas around the airport and protect our navigation easements and to make sure we keep that eye to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, 394, Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, thank you. I was not part of the board when these decisions were made, but when I did join the board, there were discussions about this. And my impression was that the FAA had already provided us approval to move forward with this. And it was after significant amount of pressure from, I'm not sure where, that ended up having the FAA change their mind. If I had a chance to vote for this, knowing that we were get an airport expansion on 10 cents on a dollar, it was a long-term play. And sometimes I've mentioned this to this board many times, that we don't necessarily have long-term vision in terms of what we do with our funds. I talk about it with occupancy tax and tourism. This would have been another one that I would have supported, but please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the FAA did approve this project, and that's why we went in this direction. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Wild. I think there's a lot of history with all of this, and certainly what's great about our meetings, they've been on YouTube since 2015. But for those meetings before that, I'm sure our clerk would be more than happy to pull up whatever minutes relate to it. Further discussion on 394, Supervisor Stroud. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I come back to you on 394, is there anyone else that would like to speak on this that has not been heard according to our rules? Supervisor McDevitt.
Yes, economic development. We have various characteristics that go into reasonable, positive economic development, and it goes to the very heart of why quality, high-tech organizations may wish to locate in this area. Whether it's our schools, whether it's our air, our water, our concern for environment, the cost of land, but our infrastructure, our roads, our highways, our bridges, and also our airport. We can't forget about that fundamental tie to what goes into positive, reasonable, and sustained economic growth. So I'm going to support this.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to be heard on 394 before we go to a second round of comments? Supervisor Bruno and Supervisor Dickinson, did I see your hand?
Yes.
Okay, Supervisor Bruno.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So just so I'm clear, as I maybe wasn't clear the last time we voted on this, this is a court order. You have to pay this, right?
Yes, correct, sir.
Thank you. In paying for this in total, this plus what we've already paid, we end up with this property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Or is this just a penalty trying to take them in? So
County, I'm just deferring over to our county attorney. That answer was correct, right?
Yes,
Yes,
that is
yes.
correct.
Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
that's it. So we're bound by law to pay this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson.
I was going to comment on Supervisor Beatty's diatribe that I'm sick of listening to. But since he's not here, I'm going to remain silent.
Okay, anyone else would like to be heard before the second round of comments?
I'll be back.
Supervisor McDevitt, I'll come right back to you after Supervisor Stroud, and if Supervisor Dickinson would like to speak again. Supervisor Stroud.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people that deal with misinformation. He's not in here right now. It wasn't taxpayer money. It was the fees collected from airport use. So, and nothing was saved because the money that we would have enjoyed in improving our airport went to another airport. And they're very thankful for our not using it as we probably perhaps should have. The other thing is that we had a guest from Genesee County who went to the longer runway, which is the new world standard. And he said, just an additional fuel cell, because many of the newer jets that have the thinner, more efficient airfoils need a longer runway. So the newer jets need a longer runway, especially if they got full fuel and full tanks. Well, that was the difference. Many of the airplanes, especially the newer ones with the more efficient airfoils, can't use a 5,000-foot runway with a full load and full fuel. So the airport operator from Genesee County was saying, just in additional fuel cells, that county's airport started to pay for itself. So we denied, actually not improving the runway cost our taxpayers more money because we're not getting advantage of the additional fuel cell, but also the new businesses that perhaps might move into the area because business jets are the wave of the future. It is the wave of the corporate world. So you got an executive, he or she, that wants to go move into this area, certainly would have been a lot more attractive with an approved airport. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a list of supervisors before you, Supervisor Beatty. Supervisor McDevitt, were you asking for a comment last round?
I'm done, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And then I had Supervisor Dickinson. Did you want to be heard again, or you're good?
I'm good.
Okay. Supervisor Bramer, then Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'll be quick. On that last point, again, we know that our airport is expanding the hangars, and we are looking, the airport operator is expanding hangars, and we're looking at doing the same. So in my mind, we are actually expanding the use of the airport. And we do have those small jets coming in and out, and it's being utilized heavily. The other thing I want to say is that it wasn't all FAA dollars, which are tax dollars ultimately, or the public's dollars, but there were definitely county tax dollars involved. And I do want to say what was saved was a very important wetlands area. It's a critical environmental area. It's called a Marl Fen. It's very important, and it's connected to Big Cedar Swamp, which many organizations, including the Adirondack Mountain Club, were working to protect. So that was one of my reasons for voting against the airport extension at the time when I came on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, just a final comment. Saratoga County, everybody knows where that is. It's about 15 miles away. They have a much shorter runway. Shorter. They have 2.5 times the amount of flights in and out of there. So if runway length was so critical, why would Saratoga County have 2.5 times the amount of jet traffic that Warren County has with a shorter runway? That's fact one. Fact two is the newer jets need less runway, not more, less. They're being designed to be able to take off and land on shorter runways, not longer runways. Now, are there a few exceptions? Sure there are, but the majority of newer jets are required to do it on less runway footage, not more. And so, you know, I'm a 100% supporter of the airport and always have been. I'm a supporter of it paying its own way because taxpayers deserve to have something paid for its own way. And this contribution by the county, the state, and the federal government proving that we didn't need another 1,000 feet. And the FAA, when they actually looked at the real data, said, you're spot on. You're right. You don't need it. And the proof of the traffic indicates as such. The length of our runway is more than adequate. In fact, we've had 5 C-5 cargo planes land there. That's the second largest military plane jet in the Air Force. We've had it land there 5 times. Southwest, if they wanted to, could land and take off their 737s. That's the only plane they use, the only jet they use. That's long enough to land and take off 737s. Now, Mr. Stroud mentioned, well, they got to leave with only 60% capacity of fuel. Do you realize the jets leaving with 60% capacity of Warren County can fly to California without stopping, can fly to Vegas without stopping, can fly to, in fact, we've had flights fly to Europe without stopping on 60% fuel. One had to stop. One, and I actually knew the person, he had to stop up in Newfoundland to get gas. So spending millions of dollars so one plane doesn't have to stop so they can get a full fuel tank makes no sense to me from an economic standpoint. And we're doing fine. We're doing robust business out there with jets because the runway is long enough. And one final comment, 119 runway was rated as the safest area and runway in the state. As the safest. That was before we took Mr. Macri land. It was rated as the safest. The FAA had it rated as the safest airport. So obviously, when we have, we need to have all the information and facts out there. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to be heard a second time that who has not been heard? It is not typically traditional. We go to a third round. However, I do have a comment before we go to a third round, and it's brief. I'm not happy over this either. I share Supervisor Bramer's concern. Very similar to many of our other situations. Unfortunately, in the last several years, court orders are court orders. And I will be supporting this because it is a court order and mandated. Supervisor Stroud, this is our last comment, please.
I'll make it brief.
Thank you.
Saratoga did want to extend the runway to 6,000 feet, but could not. They did want to, but they couldn't. The Gulfstream, one of the most popular airplanes out right now, the Gulfstream 650 with full load at standard temperature and pressure, needs 5,858 feet. Okay, so, and the C-130 that lands here lands with almost no fuel. Otherwise, it couldn't land here. All right, just to get some facts straight. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Conover.
Thank you. Just so everyone's clear. When the public takes private property, there's a process. It's called the condemnation process. And that process is designed to protect the property owner from government taking the property at some arbitrary dollar amount. The appraisals are done. A very specific process that's followed. The property owner at that point has the right to accept the offer or not accept the offer. They have the right to go to court. They have the right to have their case heard. That's what happened here. And the court arrived at a dollar amount of compensation. It's called just compensation. This is what any public entity, whether it's a town or a county or the state of New York, in the end has to pay for the acquisition of that property for the public purpose. And it's not an adversarial process. It's a process that looks at competing appraisals. It's a process that looks at competing opinions and some things that aren't so easily quantified. And that's what the process is designed to do. It's worked exactly as it's supposed to work. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very important that we always give everyone the right to debate and to discuss. There are times, though, however, in our meetings that we may have to limit or reduce those periods, but we do everything we can to allow as much flexibility. So thank you for your patience here today as we discussed other business in front of us. And with that,
Chairwoman Seaver, I'm sorry.
No problem, County Attorney. Yes.
Just feel I need to advise on Resolution 394.
Please.
This is a court order from the 3rd Department Appellate Division in Albany directing the county to pay $193,042 as, if you want to call it extra money, it's money that they determined was owed for the county's taking eminent domain of that piece of property around the airport. My advice where I really need to butt in here is that if the board does not pay this judgment, it's entirely possible that the Supreme Court here in Warren County could declare the board and the county to be in contempt of court for not paying this judgment. Thank you. That's the only comment I had.
Thank you. And please, you're never butting in. We respect the advice of our county attorney, and we certainly appreciate that additional guidance. Is it safe to say at this point I could close discussion on 394? Thank you. Any other discussion on any other resolutions by our board members here today? All right. Hearing none from our board members, at this point in time, it's appropriate for us to look to our members of the public. Again, we thank you for your being here, for your patience. And this opportunity is to speak about any of the dialogue that you heard before you over the last, I'm not sure how long we've been debating resolutions. But as it relates to the resolutions before us, would anyone like to be heard regarding those resolutions before we vote? Yes, sir, please. I'll ask you to state your name once again and your town.
Very brief.
And then we'll get right to you, ma'am.
Arthur Unati, Queensbury. Mr. Strauss said that he did not recall getting an email from me on the home delivered meals issue. I have here the receipt that the email was in fact delivered to Mr. Strauss at 2:41 p.m. on Wednesday, September 8th.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Beatrice Didio.
Other people do.
And I had a question for you. You had mentioned that the cooking of 5 meals at certain sites, 5 meals a week,
Oh, what I meant was 5 days per week.
they don't, there's a little bit of a misconception there. They do get meals, they might be cooking, but they're not serving them 5 days a week.
Understood.
Several are frozen. They get one hot meal and one frozen on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, hot meal Monday and Wednesday, they get a hot and a cold. Friday, they get a hot. So these frozen meals, I will tell you, they're not eating them. They're very, very substandard. But they are not getting a hot meal 5 days a week.
I apologize if that's the inference.
I just didn't want people to
Yeah,
think
that anybody took. I was responding, I believe it was Supervisor Wild who had asked about our meal program getting to 5 days a week. And I interpreted that question as our staff that are working in those kitchens, how many days a week are they cooking in the kitchens? So that's why I
Well, they
answered the
probably
question
are.
that way.
But, we had double the staff before, and they were cut mostly about 2 years ago, before COVID, and nobody was ever replaced. So I know a couple people asked to come back, but there was whatever reasons they didn't get hired. And I know that the government gave some sort of a grant to Queensbury. Is that any of that money, can that be used? I'm not.
Talk about ARPA.
What is what was the-
I'll address her here in 1 sec, Supervisor Beatty. Yes. Each one of the towns had a different amount of money through the American Rescue Plan Act or Recovery Plan Act.
Okay.
And then the county also did receive, the first portion of that was 6 million and then another 6 million, and gave us some guidelines around how we could spend that. We did do a survey. We asked for input from our entire community. Thank you. Thank you.
I said Meals on Wheels
Yes, you
before I
did.
heard about this.
Yes, and many people said that, which is why it's one of the priorities as we continue to talk about how to best spend those dollars. We have a meeting right after this that is going to kind of start that ball rolling a little bit faster. I know our wheels turn slow. But yes, thank you for that clarification, and we will look into that as well.
And while I'm here too, I've neglected to talk about the staff that work there, and they need to be applauded for what they've done these last year in 9 months.
I think
9
they should get an applaud right now that they're
Yeah.
able to see, but we
Yeah.
definitely want to thank them.
But they haven't changed their attitude, and I don't know about, I'm sure their jobs were put on the line with this. Of course, we don't know because they can't talk to us, but, they need to be applauded to try and hold this program together for There's over 350 people that they feed. So they've done a great job on a short staff.
Thank you.
Thank
Make
you.
sure we convey that. Thank you. Yes, sir, and then be a couple hands.
It's not to get emotional. I just want to take 1 minute. Mr. Moore, is it? You were talking, I'm concerned about the 5 meals too, about people getting as much food as they need. And I was just wondering about how you raise money for that. You said it's going to cost more money and all. And I would just, I don't know how you raise money, how you get people to give you more money for that, but I get reimbursed for my mileage. I do 2 days a week. I was doing 3. I'd be willing to talk to my fellow drivers and give up our mileage if we could help in any way.
Very Madam
Yes, please.
very generous, and I don't think that we would ever expect to have our volunteers who are so dedicated foot the bill, if you will. We have, from a financial perspective, the cost of the meal program. We have NSIP, is that the correct acronym, D? That's a federal funding stream. We have 3B and 3C. Those are 2 federal funding streams under the Older Americans Act. One is for congregate and one is for home delivered. And we have a wellness and nutrition. I believe that's a state grant. So whatever's left over after those governmental grants, I believe there's some level of contribution from participants, but I can't speak to the details of how that's done. It's a voluntary contribution as I understand it. But after those participant contributions and the much larger federal and state funding streams are taken out, that's what we call the tax levy impact of the program. It's what the county property taxpayers in Warren County pay. And that's the number that we acknowledge under any scenario is going to be increased under these conditions. And what we've been referring to in the context of the ARPA funding is that we believe that an eligible use of that ARPA funding that the county receives is to offset some of that added burden on the taxpayers. So we would much sooner, not to speak for this board, because this board would have to make the decision, but I think it's safe to say we would much sooner go to the ARPA funding than we would to try to take it out of the backs of the people that work hard to help us with these programs.
Yes, and as chair, I completely agree with that. We will do everything we can to continue to invest in this program and to reimburse. It's a lot of driving, and all your time is free. You're donating it, and we really appreciate it. And it is because of men and women like you that our community is so great. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other
Thank you.
other comments on our resolutions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Edith, North Creek. I know that you said, or unless I misunderstood, and that's possible, that it wasn't so much about the funding as about the lack of supplies. So if it's not about the funding so much, our workers in the kitchens are paid approximately minimum wage, maybe a few pennies ahead, but I know it's really not much. I have a family member that's done it, so I know. I mean, McDonald's, they get $15 an hour. The people that work in these kitchens get much less than that, unless there's something that I'm maybe not understanding. That's quite possible. So maybe our issue with not getting our workers is that we're not paying as much as McDonald's. And these people work really hard. I know the ones in North Creek that I help deliver meals with. It isn't about the money so much for them, although I'm sure that's partial, because anybody that says money doesn't matter with your pay, come on, it does. And these gals that I work with are amazing. I have seen them literally go to people's houses after work. I've seen them work beyond their work hours because they want to get stuff done. They cater as much as they are allowed to cater to their individual people. They know them by name. They can tell you what their house looks like. They can tell you about their lives. These people know who they're cooking for. and they care about them. I mean, at least up North Creek, they do. They are passionate about what they can do for these seniors. And as I am very close to that in age, it matters a great deal. I am blessed that I have two sons and daughter-in-laws that I can count on to make sure that I'm okay. But a lot of these people don't have that. And if we don't have workers to work in our kitchens because they're not getting enough wages, I mean, I have seen people leave these jobs, my family member being one of them, for a job that only paid 50 cents more an hour, not because she wanted to leave. It's just, you're only getting maybe 15 hours a week. And if you're getting 15 hours a week at $10, $12 an hour, that's not a lot. I'm just saying, if the funding is not really our issue and it's all about the supplies, then we need to treat our paid workers perhaps a little better, and maybe they will stay more and maybe we'll get more. And as far as forfeiting my cash that I get for delivering, I'm totally cool with that as long as it goes to my delivery site. I have no qualms at that. Matter of fact, when they told us we were getting, I'm like, what? What are we doing that for? I thought this was volunteer. So I'd give that up, drop of a hat, no problem. But I feel like we need to treat these really hard workers. It's not easy working in these kitchens. They're hot. You don't always obviously have the supplies. That's no, I get that they're hard to get, but these workers really work hard to make sure our seniors get the meals that they deserve. It's just something to keep in mind. We need to treat them well as well.
I know we all couldn't agree more. And to address your questions about that briefly, and I know the county administrator has some data he can share with you, but throughout this year, I did go down to Cedars and went in the kitchen and was amazed how hard everyone is working. Not that I was surprised to see how hard the work is, but I was appalled to find out throughout our union negotiations, our budget process, that in fact, as Supervisor Bramer can verify, our meal workers are perhaps the lowest, if not the lowest paid out of the county. I know Supervisor Garrity on that union negotiation team and Supervisor Bramer, along with our county administrator, continue to work very hard, not only with our unions, but with our HR department and civil service to find a way that we can continue to advocate to raise those prices, but also to look to incentivize, to look to, is it an additional health benefits? How can we encourage people to be not only part of our team, but so that they feel valued and that they can speak to and share their concerns. So please know that we want our entire community to know our doors are open. And again, I know there's a lot of emails going back and forth, and I apologize to the extent that we've missed any. But we will continue to work hard at returning those phone calls. Each one of you have a book with every single one of our phone numbers on it, our cell phones, our direct emails, and please use it and please hand it out. We work for you. And to that extent, I would just ask County Administrator to touch briefly on the issue about the disparity in pay.
Say one more
Sure.
quick thing. I used to work at the local nursing home. This is a few years ago. I'm a retired nurse. But there was this point when the workers felt they were underpaid, whatever. I'm sure every site goes through that. But they got a raise anyway, and it was retroactive. And some of them got several $1,000s. And I thought, good, everybody's going to be happy here. Now, 2 weeks later, they're all miserable again. But what I'm saying, it's also about not a quick email to say, hey, thanks for what you do. It's the actual personal walking in and saying, I see what you do. You're making a difference. Thank you so much. Before I was volunteering, I went in to see what the site was about. And I walked into the girls in North Creek and I went over and gave them hugs and said, thank you. You're making a difference for our seniors that raised children here in the community who are now adults, trying to make things work. So we've got to give the personal appreciation to them, not zapping off a quick email, because you know what? That's really easy to do. And quite frankly, thoughtless. It takes no thought to zap off a thank you. It takes everything and makes the complete difference for you to walk in and say, I appreciate what you're doing. I see what you're doing. You're making a difference. Thank you. I just had to say that because I know personally, it doesn't matter what your paycheck is if you don't feel appreciated, if you don't feel that it matters. So make a point of doing that.
Thank you. Do you, County Administrator, want to?
Oh, sure. The issue of, to use McDonald's as an example, I think that's the example. It's come up several times in the context of different positions here at the county. What happened, the McDonald's of the world during the enhanced unemployment, they have to keep selling burgers. And so they'll raise the wage to compete with that. And that's why the wages, when you compare county positions to a position, a hypothetical like McDonald's, that's why it's out of whack right now. I just, and the chairwoman hit on it. These are all in the context of collective bargaining units because our workforce is unionized. And you would think it's a simple thing for us to raise pay for low paid employees, but it's not as simple as that because there are other employees and other titles. We heard the DPW superintendent speak to some of his titles that are having this problem. So when you do one thing with a union title, it'll affect other union titles in perhaps an unintended way. So it's not, management's not able to unilaterally do that. Those discussions and those changes always have to be done in conjunction with the union. And there's a entity called the Public Employee Relations Board, PERB, down in Albany, that will bust you for improper practices. So it's all got to be done in the context of that.
Thank you. Other comments today regarding the resolutions before we vote from the public? No. Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much for your communication today. We'll start our voting and Supervisor Stroud, did you have a roll call?
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting, sure. Oh, you beat me to it. Request for roll calls, please.
All right.
No.
Yeah, I'd like the roll call vote on 392,
Please reflect roll call 392.
400,
Roll call on 400.
and I'll recuse because Lake Champlain Short Regional Board, I'm on the board of directors, so I will recuse on that vote. And 413,
413, please.
that's the SUNY Adirondack Capital Improvement Plan, and I'm on the board of trustees of SUNY Adirondack. So I will recuse.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Stroud. Would you mind just talking into your microphone? It's difficult to hear you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So I have 392, 400, 413.
And that's it. I mean,
Okay.
But I just explained why I have to recuse on 400 and 413 because I'm on those four.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Those are reflected? Yeah. Thank you. Other requests for roll calls today? Supervisor Diamond,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roll call on 372.
372. Reflected, thank you. Other roll calls today? Supervisor Wild?
Madam Chair, thank you. I was just curious if we could just group all the other roll calls that weren't just recently called out together.
I don't, if you give me a moment, please, I think we're able to do that. I think the record does have to reflect those additional roll calls. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, except for those that were just called out.
Except for the ones, he wants to know if just the automatics can be.
I don't think you can do that with finance, can you?
You can, one that Jeff, but.
Please give me just one moment. Put all the finance and these two at the end.
Yeah, he's looking.
Right. I have to go to work.
Oh, maybe. No, I don't think it can because it's financial.
Okay, members of the board, if I may have your attention for a moment. The request by Supervisor Wild was to put together all of the other roll calls and do just one roll call for those. This may present a few problems just with particular, excuse me, Supervisor Strauss, Supervisor Beatty, if I can have everybody back over here, that'd be great. Sorry. I apologize, I thought you were, I hear your voice even when you're not there, Doug, thanks. Okay, so Supervisor Wild, I understand your concern for expediency, but I do think that that might present a little bit of difficulty in just having the record reflect on how people vote. So at this point in time, I think it's appropriate to stick with our roll calls. If we could move forward just the way the resolutions are presented in front of us, given the wonderful quality discussion and debate and dialogue we've had here today. Are there requests for other roll calls? Okay, hearing none. Let's start our voting then, please. Thank you.
Resolution 353, making supplemental appropriations. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yeah.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 354, amending Warren County budget for 2021 for various departments within Warren County. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud? Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 372, authorizing agreement with Pure Foods LLC, DBA Mom's Meals. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 392, adopting the municipal supplemental funding evaluation strategy grading criteria and scoring sheet and application. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
No.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 393, amending tables of organization and Warren County salary and compensation plan for 2021. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 394, authorizing appropriation of funds from the general fund to the unappropriated surplus to the airport budget, authorizing payment to Forest Enterprises Management. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Abstain.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 400, approving the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board 2022 budget. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Recuse.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 401, authorizing appropriation of funds from the airport reserve to the airport budget to cover the cost of the airport yellow pavement markings. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 403, establishing 2021 road fund project and amending Warren County budget for 2021. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 404, establishing 2021 road, I'm sorry. we just did that one. Resolution 405, authorizing the appropriation of funds. Did I switch it? This is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Miss
403, we need to go back to, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. That's those two up. Resolution 403 is authorizing the appropriation of funds from the Rehab County Buildings Reserve to the buildings budget to cover the cost of the generator swap out.
Okay.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 404, I misread the number. We just voted on that one. That's for the road project fund and it did pass. 405 is authorizing the appropriation of funds from the county railroad repairs reserve to the railroad budget to cover the cost of the signal shutdown. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 406 is authorizing appropriation of funds from the Environmental Testing Reserve to the Real Property Tax Services budget to pay Atlantic Testing Laboratories for design plan for asbestos and lead abasement of Mosher's Garage. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Berlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 407, authorizing the appropriation of funds from the occupancy tax reserve to the tourism budget. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Yeah. Resolution 408, authorizing appropriation of funds from the occupancy tax reserve to the tourism budget. There's two that are named the same. That's 407 and 408. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 409, bond resolution. This is on capital improvements at Countryside Adult Home. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 410, this is another bond resolution. This is for the retaining wall on Lake George. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 411, this is a bond resolution for up to $6.2 million for paving projects. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 412, authorizing the appropriation of funds from the general fund unappropriated surplus. Sorry, this is for road machinery. Sorry. Or no, yeah, road machinery to cover the cost of CSEA settlement. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 413, supporting SUNY Adirondacks Capital Improvement Plan for 2022-23. Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Recuse.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Chairwoman Seaver?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Need a collective vote on the rest.
Thank you. There are remaining reservations. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstain? The rest carry. Thank you. At this point in time, we move to privilege of the floor, first for our supervisors, and then to public comment. Supervisor Garrity.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all our first responders in the county. It's been a tough week, and especially our sheriff's department. They're working almost a month with not many past days and all these events coming in. Car show, balloon fest, goes on and on and on. And I just like to thank them. We've had a couple of tragedies happen while they've been out there. And, you know, these are people that don't get to take a day off. They have to go back after the tragedies. The first responders, they're really feeling taxed. There's more people in the community, and the run totals are going up. It's an issue that we're going to have to address, and I want the Board of Supervisors to be aware of that. And it's not a town by town issue. It's a county issue that we're going to have to address in the near future. I'll be working with Chairman Diamond, EMS, and to see if we can't come up with something. But if I look at the Sheriff's Patrol, and they got help from the state police on the car show this year, and but they're just going to continue next week and next week and next week. So I want hats off to Jim and the folks over there, and hats off all the EMS agencies and fire departments have been spending a lot of time out there. It's not easy for them, you know. So thank you. I want to thank that portion of our employees too. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Garrity. I would also like to call the board's attention to your proclamations in your packet. This is National Preparedness Month, and hopefully we can get a copy of that appreciation out to all of our first responders as well. Do that, Amanda. Additional privilege of the floor, Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the board for their support for the next couple of years for the Special Olympics. I've seen it firsthand. It's really a boon to the community. It's nice to see these athletes to come out, and I am, from the city's perspective, I'm very grateful for the commitment that the full board has made to preserving and keeping the Special Olympics in our area. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I have Supervisor Leggett, then Supervisor Driscoll, then Supervisor Hogan.
Sorry, I missed the 9/11 program down in Glens Falls. I did attend the marvelous one that's up in Warrensburg that they've done for 20 years now, and want to thank Town of Warrensburg for hosting that and having all of our fire companies, Pottersville, Chester, Johnsburg, and others all come down. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I won't speak about the other proclamations that have already been addressed, but I do want to thank you for including the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I have the opportunity to also work at Catholic Charities, which administers the domestic violence program in Warren and Washington counties. They work very closely with our district attorney office. And again, thank you for the awareness about their services.
Thank you. And thank you for your advocacy. Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following this meeting, there will be a meeting of the steering committee for the stimulus funds allocations. All of the public input will be taken into consideration, and there will be a very defined process also soliciting more public input. And then those recommendations will be brought through the Economic Growth and Development Committee and ultimately brought to the full board. Everyone's engagement is encouraged and allowed. So my only request to all of you is if you're going to show up and want to participate in the proceedings, that you inform yourselves on what the rules are surrounding how we can spend this money. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hogan. And I just want to highlight as a precaution, we know that our committees are smaller and we all are putting more and more time, and it's great to see the quality efforts. Just please be mindful of quorums. And so if we do run into a situation where we have more supervisors that trigger that quorum piece of it, that we are not able to conduct county business when we have a quorum. So we want to make sure that we comply with open meeting laws. We're looking forward to that steering committee and discussion after. And of course, that steering committee will be working with the economic growth, and many updates and decisions will be made with that committee. So thank you for that. And I don't want anyone to be offended if a meeting's going on and we have to stop and just kind of move aside to not violate those open meeting laws. They're important we comply. So thank you. Additional privilege of the floor. I see Supervisor Thomas, then Supervisor Molino, then Supervisor Stroud.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a real quick thank you to all the board members that called me and sent me letters and cards, and I really appreciate it. I'm doing pretty good. The only problem was my friend right here, Mr. Stroud, stopped at my house and had a big tiramisu cake, and it made my cholesterol go up a little. But I really appreciate it. And all of yous that called, even department heads that I got calls from that missed me and my headaches that I bring to this board. So thank you very much for all of yous. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great to have you back, Supervisor Merlino. Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After complaining for 2 or 3 months about Verizon and not getting any result, I would like to say that on September 1st, the communication tower in Stony Creek went operative, and want to thank everybody, the Sheriff's Department, Mark Neal, County Administrator, and everyone else for making that happen. It's very effective, and the first responders and hopefully the Sheriff's Department themselves will visit our town a little more often, because now they can communicate back with their base. And just thank you to everyone for their help.
That's great news. Thank you. Supervisor Stroud.
Yes, thank you. I had the chance to go up to Bolton Landing and the Bolton Historical Museum, and which of course has been added to, and is a beautiful museum. And the landscaping and everything else in Rogers Park is just wonderful. But the exhibit in the Bolton Historical Museum by Julie and Fred Thatcher, they took photographs of Lake George, the people, the lake, the scenery, bow houses, old hotels, pictures that I have not even seen. And they were fantastic. They were reproduced. They're excellent quality. Each one has a story to it. But again, I know how hard it is to be a town supervisor, and I appreciate all the work that would have to go into that to make it happen. So I want to congratulate Supervisor Conover, and I think he's a great supervisor. And I know there are snide remarks by those who are not supervisors, town supervisors. Otherwise, I just want to reinforce that everything I know about Ron Conover as a supervisor is 100% fantastic. And Gene Molino, Supervisor Molino, he too is a fantastic supervisor, and I wish his good luck in continuing. And thank you. Now, I have some concerns. There've been accusations. I don't know where they are at this point. But, you know, and I heard it. I was on vacation and I watched the last meeting and so forth. So certain supervisors are spying on certain county employees and certain county supervisors' email. I mean, some are referring it to email Spygate. All right, these appear to be very serious accusations, certainly unethical, possibly criminal, and they need to be investigated. And they can't be investigated internally. These are going to have to be investigated from the outside. Somebody suggested the Attorney General's office. I'm not sure we're the appropriate source, but we need to look into that. Foils. I'm hearing from various sources that foils are not being appropriately responded to. Their redacting exceeds allowed limits. Certain foilers seem to get preferred treatment, and certain foilers automatically get bumped to the extreme calendar limits. All right, these are claims that I'm saying. And sometimes the claim is that the foil does not exist, but there's evidence that the items listed in the foil do exist. All right, this needs to be investigated and by an independent source. And I'm hearing of one case of extortion involving the threat of forcing an audit if certain support is not obtained. I don't know that to be true, but certainly the claim needs to be investigated. Intentional creation of harassing and hostile work environments for certain employees. I'm hearing this from various sources. This needs to be investigated by an independent agency. Okay. In appointments, I think that's an issue too. So it's unfortunate that some members of the board have created situations, but we need to address it, okay? I would suggest we need to take a look at appointment of nominations and approvals. I think they should come from the Board of Supervisors to avoid politics. We need to develop a process, and you may have heard this before. I said this a few months back. We need to develop a process that assures that committee appointments, committee chair assignments could be fairer and minimize the politicization of the process. In other words, be free of partisan and personal politics. Committee creations be formed with the advice and consent of the Board of Supervisors. Also, can we work to be more open and transparent and make a FOIL process that is more fair and transparent? And those who are involved in interviewing, nominations, approvals of appointees have to be independent. For example, if you're going to interview people to be on the ethics board, you should not be one of those people that's may be challenged ethically. All nominations, appointments, and approval should come from this board. All right. I think we need to do something going forward that would return this board's governance to the decorum and professionalism we've seen in previous years. But as James Otis said, the current times are dark and trying. Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Bramer, if I may just have our county administrator just touch on the couple concerns on behalf of our board, please. And then I'll go right to Supervisor Bramer.
Sure. A number of those questions hit on me because I'm the records access officer, and I think I can speak to some of them. First of all, on the FOIL process as a whole, if there is a better way to do it, I'll be the first one to sign up for that. I didn't ask to be records access officer. I was made records access officer in 2018 by the Board of Supervisors. I had indicated at the time that it was that the workload would be tremendous, and the workload is tremendous. I'm often taking home stacks that are this thick at the end of the day when I'm supposed to be with my family and going through them to see if they're responsive to FOILs. I don't think I'm not complaining. You pay me well, but I don't always feel that that's a reasonable thing to expect anybody to do as an individual. So I'd be open to different ideas on how this board wants to structure their FOIL process. In reference to redactions, the process that we always utilize is we have an initial, the IT department will run, because the vast majority of FOIL requests that we get here are for emails. So the IT department will run the keywords that they need to run in order to produce an initial stack of records. And then the records that are in need of a redaction review will go downstairs to the county attorney's office. And the county attorney's office will apply the legal standards and the case law standards and recommend redactions. County attorney's office won't send it up redacted. They'll usually send it up with a sticky note or whatever indicating what could be redacted and the grounds that could be used for the redaction. I will sometimes accept those recommendations. I will sometimes not, and I will release things that they say could be redacted, but I won't redact it it's a case by case thing. Never goes the opposite way. I'm never redacting something that the county attorney's office says shouldn't be redacted. Always in the opposite direction of more disclosure. So that's vetted by our legal staff. On timeframes for FOILs, this is a standard practice for most agencies that deal with FOILs. When you have 5 days to acknowledge a FOIL, and then you have 20 days after the acknowledgement to respond. Christy handles all of those communications on behalf of Warren County, and she will often, when a FOIL is acknowledged, count out 20 business days and say you will have your response by X date. Doesn't mean that we always take that long. We try to do it with more quickly. But there's a high volume here, and you've got one attorney doing a redaction review, and you've got one records access officer. It has a lot of other things on his plate. Again, not complaining. If we want to do it differently, we should do it differently. Records don't exist, and when there's evidence that they do. I explained how the emails are generated in the first place by the IT department. The records that we're looking through in response to a request under FOIL is what's generated by the IT department when the IT department utilizes the searching tools that they have and the retrieval tools that is within their ability to produce. Does every single email always come through? No, it doesn't. We've had a couple of instances where the person foiling will question, well, I think that this record exists. And we'll go back and perform a more diligent search and we'll find that it exists. And you know, there's limitations to technology here, but we do always perform a diligent search for records. And I'll certify that a diligent search was performed for records. I'll swear to it. I'll have it notarized. And we do that from time to time when it's asked for by the person who made the request. As far as extortion, I don't know. I haven't heard anything on that. I'm not privy to it if those claims have existed. Harassment, we haven't received any complaints under the county's harassment and discrimination policy, other than, you know, we have an obligation if we have a complaint that is founded to report that back to the personnel committee when we discover that it's founded. We don't have the same obligation to report claims that are found to be unfounded. But I'll tell you right now that we do not have any pending claims that we believe are unfounded. Anything that we've dealt with this year in terms of harassment complaints have been discussed in executive session in the personnel committee. Just on the point of appointments to the Board of Ethics, those appointments have to be adopted by resolution of the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'll just say, I know it's a little cloudy out today, but I think there are very bright days ahead for Warren County. We have wonderful employees who are working very hard. There are supervisors here at this table working very hard, and we're doing great things. And the ARPA money is going to be a really great improvement. I think Administrator Moore covered a lot of things that were mentioned by Supervisor Stroud. I really don't have anything to add to any of that. I will say that there were, it was opened up to anyone who wanted to participate in the ethics board interview. So if any supervisors want to take part in that process, we have the dates scheduled, and they're in the future. So if you still want to do that, you can participate. On October 22nd, there is the date for opening day for Special Olympics. I wanted to put that out there as an announcement. Also, September 22nd, which is next week, we have the septic committee workshop. Basically, that's up at Horicon, and I wanted to thank Supervisor Smith for hosting that. And lastly, our chairwoman has been great about supporting our employees who want to take training. So I wanted to acknowledge that she has been appointed by NISAC to attend the NACO County Leadership Institute training. That's really a great accomplishment for you and great for Warren County. Thank you. That's my announcements.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We still are under privilege of the floor, and then we want to afford our public the chance for privilege of the floor and continue with announcements as well. So you'll have another opportunity then. I saw Supervisor Driscoll, then Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I just want to invite and encourage my colleagues, my friends, to take a moment today and all tomorrows to possibly put a smile on someone's face. And we could probably start with many of our senior citizens. And as I've done it at past board meetings, I want to reiterate what Janelle Jones stated a couple of hours ago, that we encourage our neighbors to mask, to get vaccinated, and to be safe out there, not just for themselves, but for their friends and family members. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm just asking about a request that I had last month. I'm not sure where it is, but there were some accusations made last month that I felt should be dealt with by an independent investigation. Madam Chair, I think you actually agreed that they were pretty serious allegations. They were in government apps. I believe it was transferred to personnel, but I'm not sure where we are with that, or is it being pushed under the rug? I'd kind of like to get a sense of where we are with that independent investigation. Supervisor Stroud called it out also today. So I'm just curious, where are we and what do we need to do to make something like that happen?
Supervisor Wild, we will take all complaints into this county incredibly seriously. And as you mentioned, there's been many allegations. I would encourage anyone that has concerns to please file the factual documentation and follow our policies that we have afforded to all of our public. We haven't just afforded it through the New York State requirement through harassment and discrimination and sexual harassment policies, but we enhanced our ethics policy recently. And I wish that Supervisor Wild, you voted for that. But what we did with it is we increased at our accountability. So now any member of the public may file an ethics complaint against any member of the board or against any employee. It will be looked into, reviewed, and decided upon with our ethics board. There is a lengthy new law that we have in place, and I am so proud of this board for working as hard as they did for that policy. So we have increased that level of transparency and accountability. As it relates specifically to your request for an independent investigation, I'm going to answer this twofold. One, I'm going to ask our county administrator to address it, and Supervisor Bramer, who is our chairwoman of personnel, as you indicated, I do believe that that's the last committee that we saw that on. So Administrator Moore, then Supervisor Bramer.
In terms of the concept of an independent investigation, I guess I'm somewhat perplexed as to how we would do that. Are we talking about hiring a law firm and this a county paying a law firm to investigate the county? That you would, there's a question of impartiality there if we're paying for it. There's a question of the authorization to do that, to let that contract. It would have to come through the Board of Supervisors. Is it a request to an outside entity such as the Attorney General or state police or whatever? In that case, we're not paying for it. Anybody has the ability to make a complaint to an agency like that. And that those agencies take those complaints every single day and they look at them and they decide what they want to follow and what they don't want to follow. So I don't know what more I can say on that than that.
Thank you. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. This was an item on our agenda at the last meeting, and I'm not sure if you were at personnel, but it was a 3-hour meeting. We had a lot of county business to get done, and what we said is that we would bring it back to committee next month. At the end of the 3-hour meeting, we had, that was our indication to bring it forward at the next meeting, month meeting.
Thank you. Then I believe that is asked and answered. Supervisor Strow, I need to make sure that other people that haven't been heard yet have an opportunity under privilege of the floor, which I believe you started off our privilege of the floor. That question was specifically asked to me, and in answering that, I did ask for our administrator and our personnel officer to answer it. Are there other comments on the first round of privilege of the floor and trying to keep track appropriately? Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, just as a point of information, my understanding, Mr. Strow, is that the county administrator has instructed the IT department that there's to be no further provision of emails to individual supervisors until such time as we create some rules to the road going forward. He's been very busy with the budget process and with COVID and everything else. So some of us have been certainly tried to be patient relative to the generation of some rules to the roads relative to how and under what circumstances these types of requests can be made and honored. And my understanding is that he's got it on his list and that he plans to get to it in reasonable order. I don't know, Ryan, if I said anything out of line here, Madam Chairman, if I could turn it back. I just want to make sure that my understanding is correct.
Thank you, Supervisor Conover. County Administrator Moore?
Yes, that's correct. Mike knows that if Mike were to hypothetically receive a request by anybody to view county emails, that I'm to be notified, and that it's not just something that would arbitrarily be granted. And there have been no requests, certainly from any supervisor. I can tell you, I won't say which countywide elected official it is, but a countywide elected official did recently request access to emails of employees who work in that department for a very legitimate reason. And we did not grant that. Didn't necessarily feel right about it, but I said to that county official, as well as the IT director, we need to hold on this because we have a pending policy discussion that the Board of Supervisors is going to have. And I don't want to violate the spirit of that discussion, which has not yet happened. And as you stated, Supervisor, there are a lot of oars in the water right now, and that's a priority, but not the most important priority for me. But we will get to it.
Thank you. Privilege of the floor for the first round still. Supervisor McDevitt.
Yeah, the allegation that some supervisors are spying or looking at employees' emails, and the allegation that we've heard the most of is that our former attorney, someone was looking at Ms. Cassane's emails. Now, I don't know what gets much more serious than that. To me, I would have the state police investigate it. That simple.
Any other privilege of the floor? Supervisor Beatty?
Mr. Moore, has any laws that you know have been broken?
if I have reason to believe that laws are broken, my standard procedure is to report it to the state police. And
And have you reported that, anything to the state police? No.
on this matter or on any matter?
Well, on this matter, obviously, this is the question.
do you have a point of order? Because I'm, okay, thank you. Supervisor Beatty, all questions during our board meeting, just as I afford every committee chair that opportunity at your meetings, need to be addressed through the chair. I have no problem with flexibility and trying to get questions answered and having this public forum to be able to have our administrator and county attorney address those questions as well. But there does need to be a procedural aspect to this. So Supervisor Beatty, I understand that you have a question for County Administrator Moore. County Administrator Moore, would you please answer Supervisor Beatty's concern?
The question is, on this particular matter, have I made any reports to the state police? No, because I don't have any evidence in my possession that indicates any crime was committed or any law was broken. I don't even have specifics about accusations. I don't have evidence to back up accusations. The accusations that have been made are that an employee's emails were somehow inspected. That's not even necessarily contrary to the current policy that we have in place, because the current policy we have in place states that email records are part of it's part of the computer policy, and there's no expectation of privacy. Everyone who utilizes our computer system signs an acknowledgement that they understand that and that they understand the policy. And I think that gets to Supervisor Conover's point. Do we need to take another look at that policy?
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Beatty. Before our second round of privilege of the floor, is there any other supervisor? I see your hand, Supervisor Straugh. I will get to you as soon as everyone else has had an opportunity. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on privilege of the floor here today before our second round? Has not already been heard. Because I would very much like to get to our public as well. Supervisor Straugh.
Yeah, but there was a recent incident where there were accusations made, just right here. We hired an independent law firm to do fact finding. That's all. And is there a case to be made or not? Why don't we do the same thing here? Why don't we hire an independent agency to do some fact finding on this case? Because I understand there's some supervisors here that know more about this than I do. All right, they need to be interviewed. We need to have the facts, wherever they may lie, come to the surface. And that can only be done from somebody on the outside, objective, independent, do some fact finding. We did it before, and you know who I'm talking about.
Once again, Supervisor Straugh, I do believe this item is on the personnel agenda, but was discussed at our last personnel meeting as well. So I hope everyone can attend the personnel meeting. I know it's a lengthy one coming up here in a few weeks. Additional privilege of the floor. Hearing no further privilege of the floor from our supervisors, at this point in time, I would very much like to afford the opportunity to members of the public. This is your opportunity during privilege of the floor to please share any of your comments with the board, should you desire. Of course, ma'am.
Freedom of information law. Sorry.
I know we have so many acronyms we have to remember to provide it in detail. Thank you. Is there any privilege of the floor at this time? Yes. Oh. Well, thank you for being here. And again, we work for you. We want to continue to meet those expectations. Yes. Please come to the podium and state your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Stroud, Queensbury, New York. I came here in April to address an accusation made against me. It was in April. I came in May, and I waited and waited, and I had an appointment, so I wasn't able to address publicly what was said about me publicly. Then I had a serious accident. I'm still recovering from it, unable to drive myself here. And then we had vacation last month. So here I am, probably old news, but it's something that I feel strongly about that I would like to address this board. An accusation was made by Supervisor Bramer stating my husband puts me up to foiling. Unequivocally, I can state that's not true. Most of the time when I foil, he's not even aware of it. When he comes in that door, that's the last thing he wants to talk about. His business. I come home to get away from that. So, and I don't even have Miss Bramer's attention as I'm speaking. I just want you to acknowledge that's absolutely untrue. The accusation you made about me in April, not being able to foil under my own faculties. I foil because I foil. I don't take directive. He doesn't even know I'm doing it. So just to clear that up, and this is back from April, I've waited to tell you publicly because you made the accusation publicly. So again, this is not new, but I've waited months to talk. Chairperson Sieber, as well as a few other supervisors, have repeatedly told numerous media outlets with the creation of majority-minority positions that Warren County was finally doing things legally. I opted to follow the rules of the law. At the 3/19/21 Board of Supervisor meeting, Supervisor Thomas stated that through municipal home rule law, that if it was a desire of the board to pay a stipend for chair of the finance committee or any other committee, a local law could be introduced through the municipal home rule law to permit the board to do so legally. He said this may be subject to a referendum, and the county residents could circulate a petition and place it on the ballot to be voted on. That's from the meeting minutes. Chairwoman Sieber apprised Supervisor Thomas was bringing up a good point. She suggested further research be done by the county attorney and report on it at a future committee. In May 6, 21, Deanna Ream, former elected official, assessor to many towns, authored a letter which appeared in the Chronicle. I don't have the use of my other hand, so. There was absolutely no need for the M&Ms. All the board had to do was legally pay the committee's chair to make the board legal, was establish a local law pursuant to, once again, municipal home rule law. As Ms. Ream says, easy peasy, instead of unnecessarily politicizing and polarizing the whole board. I briefly did some research. What I came up with, County Government Organization in New York State / NISAC, which we're all familiar with. This was 2015. The non-charter counties, which I believe Warren County is a non-charter county, abide by the provisions of the county law and the municipal home rule law to adopt their administrative structure. The municipal home rule law gives non-charter counties the ability to change their administrative structure through the enactment of local laws. These changes are not subject to mandatory public referendum unless local law abolishes, diminishes, or curtails the power of an elected official. Also did a quick search, New York State Senate website, specifically Senator Dan Steck's official webpage. Cited at the bottom was a link with instructions how to complete the home rule request form. One page. The instructions, one page. So getting back to the original, we're finally do things legally, was not the only option, was to create a majority position. There were other options. They were either not explored or ignored. And with that, I had emailed Ms. Chairperson Sieber 3 times. A month after her statement that she would refer it to the county attorney, I emailed her on 4/21 to ask if any progress had been made on the research. Followed up on 4/26. Any progress made on the research on the home municipal rule? Finally, on 7/6, can you now provide an answer more than 3 months after your comments as chairwoman? Has any progress been made in your research? Ray Frank Thomas, municipal home rule. Three emails. I never got one response, not one. I know you really like this M&M. I know you have no intention of changing it this year, but I'm hoping that next year, your organizational meeting, that you go back to the way it was. You don't sort out supervisors by political affiliation. This has not made this body of governance a better body. It's made it worse. It's made it more divisive. And lastly, I want to talk about the accusations that were made. And at this point, I'm hearing that they're just accusations. Sent to at least 10 of you people sitting here with supporting documentation. We cannot allow the very people to investigate this that are named in these documents. As Mr. Stroud, my husband, said back in May, you were right on it. This needs to be investigated. And to your credit, you did. You appointed an outside investigator who researched, who made recommendations. Why is this treated any different? This is a conflict when we investigate ourselves and probably exonerate ourselves. That's a conflict. That's wrong. You've lost the confidence of the public. This exists. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that our county administrator would like to address some of the concerns that you brought up, Mrs. Stroud. I also want to just briefly, before you address those concerns, county administrator, highlight that, Ms. Stroud, I'm just looking very quickly at my emails from you, but since the beginning of February, I have about 23. I have in fact responded to a couple of those emails, and I believe in respectful and courteous and professional dialogue. I certainly appreciate your time here today and to provide the concerns in such a respectful way that you did here today when addressing this board and me. I also wanted to point out that your request on the municipal home rule law brought up by Budget Officer Thomas has been reported not only in various county meetings, during committee meetings, and we did have a follow-up from our county attorney's office on multiple occasions on this topic. And I know that County Administrator Moore wanted to talk a little bit more about that municipal home rule process and the research that did go into all of this. And perhaps it would be helpful to once again state for the record that history, if you wouldn't mind, County Administrator.
Sure. And it's,
Oh, he's okay. I would ask though, County Administrator, if you would please still put that on the record. It's very important, but also let's follow up with an email to Ms. Stroud with that information as well.
that's what I was going to
Thank
say.
you.
And this may be on me. Maybe I didn't communicate it back to the board as well as to Mrs. Stroud, but I certainly will. I'll forward this email chain to everybody. I believe she's referring to an email from Wednesday, April 21st. It went to the chairwoman, to Amanda Allen, and to me regarding minutes from the March 19th board meeting. And Mrs. Stroud wrote to us, Chairwoman Sieber asked Ms. Kassane if she would like to comment on municipal home rule law, and Ms. Kassane replied in the negative, stating she was uncomfortable commenting without doing further research. Chairwoman Sieber apprised Supervisor Thomas he was bringing up a good point, and she suggested further research be done by the county attorney and report on it at a future committee meeting. Has any progress been made on this research? Thank you for your anticipated cooperation on this matter. I forwarded that message the same day over to the former county attorney and said, we talked about this question a few weeks ago, and I don't recall where it was at. I think not far, because Frank had only just made the suggestion. Have you had any chance to look at this and whether it might really be an option as Frank thinks? Thanks. And the response was from the former county attorney. It looks like I copied Robert on it, but maybe I failed in getting this response out to others. If I did, I apologize for that. And the response from the former county attorney is, Ryan, county law section 200 speaks to compensation of supervisors. As you and I both know, the only positions allowed additional compensation are the chair, minority, and majority leader. Budget officer is allowed additional compensation under section 351. County law section 151 allows for the appointment of a vice chair, but does not speak to any compensation for this position. Neither section of county law 151 or 200 allows for any exceptions therefore, and we would not be able to pass any local law to pay the vice chair. However, the county could submit a municipal home rule request to the state legislature in the same fashion as we do for the mortgage recording tax, to ask the legislature to add a section to the state law which would allow Warren County to pay the vice chair. This would need to be an action by the state legislature to either change the county law is a state law, it's named the New York State County Law, or provide an exception to Warren County under the county law in order to pay the vice chair. Please let me know if there are any further questions or concerns. So the answer is that power is reserved for the state government. And in order to use the municipal home rule law, that doesn't mean that under the auspice, according to the legal analysis that I was provided, doesn't mean that under the auspices of the municipal home rule law, we have the ability to do this for ourselves. It means we have the ability to request a state legislation for the state to do it for us. And that was the issue that we were looking at earlier in the year, that when we reviewed the county law, there is no authorization to pay that stipend for the vice chair. You could, the county law spells out chair, the minority leader, the majority leader, and the budget officer.
Thank you for once again putting that on the record. I think that was very
Sure,
helpful.
I'll forward this right now before I forget.
Yeah,
I
if you wouldn't mind.
apologize.
Thank you. Other comments here today? I have Supervisor Beatty and Supervisor Garrity.
Yeah. Ms. Strau has emailed me a few times and said, don't ever respond. So I didn't respond. And then I got another email saying, why aren't you responding? Well, I honored her request not to respond. And then she keeps sending me emails, why aren't you responding? So that type of irrationality, to me, I don't know how to deal with that. Someone says, don't respond, you don't respond. Somebody says, respond, you respond, but so.
Okay.
I can tell you that it's very confusing to anyone.
Supervisor Garrity, I know you went to be heard. I think Supervisor Bramer, Supervisor McDevitt, and I neglected to kind of go in between. I just want to make sure I see that we have other members. Are you any privilege of the floor additionally? No. Okay. Thank you. Supervisor Garrity.
Real quick, Ryan, before you send the response, can you check in about the charter county or non-charter county?
I already sent it. What was the point though? Charter,
Point is
non-charter?
that if you're a chartered county, it's one way. If you're non-chartered county, you have the right to do municipal home rule. At least that's what I heard. So could we clarify that if we're chartered, non-chartered?
Well, we're a non-charter county, so a charter county has the right to adopt a county charter and handle all of
Like
this
the Class
within.
A and Class B.
Right. And as a non-charter county, the municipal home rule law allows us the ability to ask the state legislature to accept us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Thomas, I just had Supervisor Bramer, then Supervisor McDevitt, and then I promise you, Supervisor Thomas.
Good.
Thank you. Supervisor Bramer.
My comment is that if there are 10 supervisors with email documentation of what Mrs. Strau was talking about, please get that to Administrator Moore before our next Personnel Committee meeting where this will be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor McDevitt.
Yes, when any citizen of Warren County comes before the Warren County Board of Supervisors and makes comments to describe Mrs. Strauss' comments as irrational behavior. That is a new low as far as I'm concerned in the description of, and that is what Supervisor Beatty just did. Irrational
order.
behavior.
Point of order, state your point.
He's using individual supervisors' names. I thought we were not allowed to do that.
Point well taken. Supervisor McDevitt, please be aware that you may not insult your fellow board members by name here in this board during a meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you. In relation to municipal home rule law, I mean, the board can still do that option if they so choose. I kind of got the impression, not only today, but in the past, when Ms. Cassane issued that opinion, that it was being put across as though we can't do that. You can still do it. I've thumbed through quite a lot of state law, and I see exceptions in there for all kinds of things, for counties, towns, etc. So it's this, you know, I got the impression from her opinion that it couldn't be done. And I don't agree with that. So.
Supervisor Thomas, thank you. I think it is something that we'll continue to ask our county attorney's office to stay on top of. And I know that Supervisor Beatty has scheduled in his government ops as we get through the budget process and after that is over, to be talking about our rules of the board. You know, that's been a long-standing discussion of this. I hope everyone's keeping notes because we are looking forward to having that discussion in our committee meetings before the end of the year. So maybe we'll be able to have some additional information on that, you know, to that extent to Supervisor Thomas. And I just want to make sure no one else, Supervisor Beatty has a comment first. Other comments? Supervisor Beatty.
I just want to congratulate you for decreasing the compensation plan this year by 9.5%. That's something that's never been done up here at the county, never. Although other supervisors have voted to increase it every year. This is the first year ever that the compensation plan has been decreased. And that's something that should be touted loud and clear. Decreased by over 9%. And that's a $3,000 savings to the county. So, you know, I know that a lot of times misinformation gets out there and distorted, and people are running for offices and they like to make outlandish statements and comments and so forth. I get it. It's as one supervisor once said, it's the political season. It's a silly season. Okay. But I'd like to also address one other point. An individual was here last month and he tried to make the allegations that the county is having massive resignations. His neighbor told him, hey, they're leaving in droves. Well, the fact of the matter is I had our human resource director, Jackie Figueroa, actually pull the numbers. So Warren County's had 4.6% turnover from January to July this year. That's why I asked her to run, end of July. Now Essex County, our sister county, has 5.6%. And Washington County is 6.4. They're 34% higher turnover rate than Warren County. I think people are staying in droves here. So any allegation and misnomer, hey, they're leaving. It's a silly season. It's a candidate making silly remarks that aren't backed up by the facts from Ms. Figueroa. So I wanted to thank the county employees for staying, because they're staying in droves. In fact, we lead all three counties. So that needs to be told. The truth needs to be told. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further announcements, I would just like to take a moment to say that today was a fundraiser, a scholarship event for Ed Bartholomew. I know all of us have been here all day and we were not able to make it there, but I'm sure we're with our friends recognizing him in spirit and continue to keep his family and his friends in our prayers and our thoughts. With that being said, I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn. That is made by Supervisor Frazier and seconded by Supervisor Smith. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you.